Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining on this Wednesday. It's a kind of special Wednesday in a way. The end of an era. Because I've made the decision that this community stream is going to stop happening in its current form. So I'll tell you why in a moment. But yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's happened for good reasons, and it's going to lead to good things happening. So it's just going to be a few weeks of change. And I thought I'd use the opportunity of our current... we're already in a bit of a state of chaos because CollabJam started 3 days ago and people have been working on that. So it's already a bit different in terms of what I'm doing with my time. I'm not actually working on a game jam game this time. I'm trying to just sit it out and just make sure I pay attention to what people are doing in the forum and give them help if they need it this time round. So if you're unfamiliar, CollabJam, we ran the first one last year. I deliberately wanted to run a jam that people had to be in a team to enter because there is so much kind of valorization of indie being a solo, lonely thing where you have to do everything yourself. There's so much of that on YouTube, on Reddit. I understand where it comes from. I understand lots of people don't have people to work with, but I also think there is a little bit of a kind of antisocial streak in some of that where people are like, you know, no one's good enough to work with me. So I wanted to set something up that was pushing back against that a little bit. And, you know, there are so many game jams out there. If you look at the game jam calendar, there's indiegamejams.com. Just a massive Gantt chart of all of, like, scraped all of the game jams happening at any given time, and there's just an overwhelming amount of game jams going on at any given time. And I thought if Indie Game Clinic, i.e. me and you guys who are part of the community, if we're going to have game jams, they should have like a specific learning purpose. Otherwise I wouldn't be kind of living up to my obligations as sort of a self-professed game design educator. And you wouldn't get anything else out of it that you wouldn't just get from picking one of these random jams on the list and doing them. So, you know, CollabJam is the way it is because I felt there was a need for people to have an earnest go at working together as a team. Not everyone's going to have a good experience of it. There's going to be people that feel let down by other people. That's always the risk. And the saying that you will hear a lot is that discomfort is the cost of community. That's something I've experienced lots in my life, being both in teams making games, but other types of teams, being in bands, hosting events, you know, hosting parties, anything like that that involves more than one person doing everything is nerve-wracking. It's scary. It involves discomfort because working with other people involves that fundamentally. And the only way to get used to it is by doing it a lot. And then you get better at all of the little micro skills. You know, it's just like being in relationships and friendships. There are skills involved in that, like pushing past your discomfort to say things out loud or ask things that someone might not want to talk about. All of those kind of things are the skills that are required to work with other people. And I'm very, very resistant to the idea of people having fixed personalities about these things. You know, I was the sort of person that grew up with lots of kind of solitary hobbies. I wasn't necessarily an introvert. I spent a lot of time alone as a teenager, making games, making music, stuff like that. But I still go to parties. I still enjoyed hanging out with my friends. But most of the things I enjoyed doing were very intense things where you needed to sit down and think very hard. And so they weren't like conducive to doing with a group of people. So by the time I was in my 30s, I thought I was an introvert because all of my hobbies were like solitary, lock-in monk mode hobbies. And if I did a Myers-Briggs test in my 30s, it would always put me in the I category, say I was an introvert. If I do one now, it will say I'm an extrovert. I've since learnt that there are things called ambiverts that are like floating. But I think it's very dangerous to get like a locked sense of who you are in terms of those things because it can really limit you in life. And there is a lot of that in the game dev community, and some of it comes from a totally valid place of life experience of like people have had bad experiences working with other people or just generally in their life that means that they don't trust people. And then there are people out there that are preying on that and saying it's okay, you can make $1 million by just locking yourself in your room for 3 months, not going out and programming. and you will make magic money. And I just think that's dangerous. You look at figures like Notch, how miserable Notch ended up. Not that he was working alone, but that kind of valorization of the solo developer working away for ages on something and then just making loads of money and still not being happy makes me feel very sad about the world. So you know, that's what we're like here. We're community focused. I know that's a bit cheesy, but and then you don't make the magic money. Yeah, exactly. At least if you go into things with the expectation that you're going to have fun and meet people and like have fun making something, then you get something out of it even if you don't make any money. And then you're more likely to enjoy the thing, so you're going to do it more, so you're going to practice more, and then you might accidentally end up making money. So it's sort of like a weird this is also the reason why we get sociological about it for a little bit. This is one of the reasons why the arts are dominated by middle class people and why there aren't as many working class people in the arts as there should be. It's not necessarily about money in a direct way, but the people that come from middle class backgrounds that just have free time to mess around, not get a job, experiment, hang out with their friends, do things for the sake of it and do things for fun, just end up practicing more and getting better. Whereas when you're desperate to like, I must immediately monetize this thing because I'm poor, you don't get as good at it because you're not learning through playing. You're not learning through, you know, effing around and finding out, which is often the best way of learning when it comes to like technical and creative things. So there's like a whole wormhole you could go down there, and it's kind of, that's what my PhD was about. People kind of occasionally quiz me on that because they expect my PhD to be about making games, which is not really how PhDs work. They are about kind of research and stuff like that. That's what my PhD was about. It was about like the sociology of education and how people learn things like technology through informally messing about, and why fields like game dev or programming tend to be dominated by people who learnt as hobbyists rather than people who learnt formally by going to school for it. Obviously, there's still value in going to school for those things, but you'll tend to find the people that are top of the class in any kind of subject, any subject where it could be considered a hobby for lots of people. Programming, art, music, the people that are top of the class are the people who learn it by messing around first and then go to formal education to like top up and get the piece of paper, you know. And that's one of the sad things about doing any kind of education in the arts, is you can see there's loads of people with potential, but they just don't have the time. It's why stuff like Ireland has just introduced this scheme where they're giving a certain amount of artists every year universal basic income. So it's basically like acknowledging that being an artist has some sort of social value, and if you can kind of prove to the government that you're an artist, they will just pay for you to live and make art for that amount of time. And they've already found that for every like pound or euro they've given out, they're generating 1.4 back. So it's already kind of proven that it works if it's tested in the right way. So yeah, universal basic income, everyone make cool stuff, and let's all stop treating game dev like a kind of Red Sea get rich quick scheme. But you all know that anyway. If you're like one of the 38 people who's watching this live, you know that that's kind of how I feel about these things already. So yeah, good luck to everyone who's taking part in the jam. If you have any rule clarifications, there's a thread for that here on the jam page. I also made a sneak peek thread so people can just post like out of context bits of their games as they work on them. I've kind of advised people, don't explain the game, you know, just this is where you post your funny bugs or just like a cool looking thing that you're proud of, just so that this doesn't become too clinical, because I think you need the fun side when you're working on a game jam. And yeah, rule clarifications are getting posted there as and when, but the top level thing is just, you know, when in doubt, don't ask whether it's allowed by me, like the leader of the jam. Ask whether your other judges would think it's an edge case that shouldn't have been allowed, because it kind of comes down to that, because all of the other jammers will be voting on your game. So don't try and like get stuff past them or do sneaky things, because it's going to annoy them, and they're your people who are voting. So I'm just having a look back through the chat, and then we'll talk about today's stream. Yeah, Kana, kind of said there's a common trope of people seeing the product of years in industry as the work of an auteur. Yeah, and even when you have got like indies that make a game on their own or seemingly on their own, often it's that they've learned something at a job first. And I think if you look at game dev as being like any other trade, and it's not, you know, there's unusual things about making a game. Making a game is one of the strangest things that someone can dedicate their time to in terms of like how rare it is in the world, you know. So it's very hard. That's why it's very hard to just go out and talk to people about making a game in your town, because, you know, I started a meetup for game developers in my town. It's been very hard to find people. I found about 5 or 6 people that are willing to come, but then they think, oh, I'm not, you know, I don't really belong here because I'm just messing about. It's like, no, come, hang out, talk. But it's such a rare thing in the first place that it's very unusual. But I think when you think of like the idea of going indie, right? It's like you learn a trade from somewhere else, and then when you decide to make your own business doing that trade, you've already done an apprenticeship, right? Like people don't start a law practice without practicing in someone else's law practice before they start their own. People don't become a freelance electrician or plumber without learning under someone else first, or at least I hope so. I wouldn't hire someone like that. And I feel kind of the same way with games as well. And I know that doesn't help as like careers advice to say, oh, get a job first, because there are jobs. There's more jobs than people think. It's just the jobs that most people would have to do as entry-level jobs aren't exciting jobs. You know, I've never really worked at a studio. Sorry to all my previous bosses and stuff, but I've never really worked at a studio I aspired to work at. And now I go on LinkedIn and I see jobs at Larian and stuff like that. I'm like, I'd love to be able to work there. Can't move there because of kids, stuff like that. But all of the jobs I've had in industry have been like something I just needed to do to pay the bills. But I've learned so much doing them. And a lot of the stuff that I talk about on this channel when it comes to like design, thinking about end user experience, project management, all come from that experience. Like my technical understanding of how to build a game doesn't come from that, because at my job I wasn't programming. My kind of artistic sensibilities come from like drawing at home and looking at other games and looking at other things I think are cool in the world. But everything to do with like the more practical process of how you make a game in a methodical way and how you do production and stuff, I've learned from working at studios, doing jobs that I didn't super want to do, that had fun moments and interesting things to work on. But there was never a case where it was like, you know, I've got a friend who did a games course locally, made a bunch of hobby games, did a couple of work experience jobs in the UK, and then moved to Canada and is working at Rockstar now. And that's like a very aspirational job. I've never kind of gone far enough into the industry to do that route, but I do think there's a lot of sense in like the idea that you learn to do something under someone first, or in more of a like a collective situation, and then over time you build your sense of like what you're good at and how you think a game should be made or how you think a studio should be run, and then you go off and do that. But there's this pervasive idea that everyone at the age of 18 or 20 or 25 should just immediately be thinking about making their own game and releasing it, which when you frame it in more general business terms is like being a self-employed person or being a business owner, which you kind of wouldn't think about doing in any other field. Giggles, it's still not too late to join the jam. There might be a way to contribute to someone else's project. So, you know, I know you're on the Discord, so feel free to, there's the Jammers tag now. There's a green temporary tag that's at Jammers, and you can like say, you know, at Jammers, anyone need a bit of extra help with some painted backgrounds or whatever it is you feel you can contribute. And then like a team that's already working might be able to kind of grab you and pull you into that team. And then you don't have to like be super involved in the early stage that people are in now of like working out what their game fundamentally is. You can just kind of go in and contribute some sort of asset, or, you know, maybe playtesting and feedbacking or whatever. Don't annoy the people grading your answers is also what I tell my students. Yeah, exactly. I said that to a student once and they were like, are you threatening us? I was like, well, I'm threatening you with a relevant thing, yeah. It's my Delta Green character sheets from my Delta Green game last night that are still open. Okay, so in terms of what's happening today, we've been doing these longer community playtests where every other Wednesday, I go through all the games submitted by patrons and I just play those. And that's been helpful so far, and it's been a good patron reward. Oh yeah, Giggles, use the forum for that. There's a couple of threads about it as well. Yeah, I can give you the Delta Green rundown later. So yeah, every other week we did this playtest of just stuff from the Discord. And the thing is, if I look at it now, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 games that we're going to play in this session. And there's more as well that I should fit into this session. But this session has been getting quite cramped. And I've been rushing them. And I think, you know, given that this is a way of, you know, rewarding people who support the channel, it doesn't make sense that I do Indies Under the Knife on a Thursday and I play the public's games for like 30 to 60, sometimes 90 minutes each. And then you guys' games, I rush to fit into this stream. So what's happening going forward, in case you haven't seen it on the Discord, is in future we're going to start... We've got a few more streams coming up that are like the standard Indies Under the Knife. Like these ones. Where these are all kind of publicly submitted games. So on the 21st, Sparrow Warfare, Space Cat Solitaire, Real Time Chess. These are all kind of publicly submitted games. Same with 3D Parkour, same with the Metroidvania-ish. But on Monday, I've scheduled a stream, and this is what Indies Under the Knife will be like going forward as we move out of May. So this is Fatal Exception, Bound Together, Northander Chronicles. So Fatal Exception and Bound Together are both patrons games that were submitted for this stream. So instead of playing them today, I've put them together in a deck builder stream next week. And I'm also going to replay Northander Chronicles because that was a publicly submitted deck builder that I really liked and wanted to play a little bit more. So going forward, this is how the community streams will work. It's all going to go back into Indies Under the Knife just to make it easier for viewers to understand as well. Like there's the 50 or so of you that watch these live, and then about 1,000 people that watch them after the fact. And I just think it's a bit confusing to split things up. So we're going to transition to everything being called Indies Under the Knife again. And we'll have a stream like this, where there's 1 or 2 of your games that you've submitted from the secret form on the Discord for patrons. And then I'll pair that up with a similar publicly submitted game, and it will just kind of all go together in one thing. And then rather than having this separate community stream, I will just ping people in the Discord and let them know, hey, your game's up on next Thursday. Your game's up on, you know, in 2 weeks' time, whatever. There might be a bit more of a delay, but you'll know when your game is being shown, and I'll show it alongside similar games. And that will give us more interesting design discussions because you won't just be in a big random bag of all of the community's games. So thanks, Giggles. It's actually a Canva clip art. I did not have that particular set of scrubs at home. Okay, so we're going to get started, and I'm going to just make sure I've got the right name of each game. This is called Ball Wizard. So this is by Verdnault, who made Negative Space last year. That is kind of one of my favorite games of last year. And this is a kind of pachinko type game with a wizard. There's several things that I like a lot here already, just looking at this. I think anytime you can take a really just basically satisfying physical thing like pachinko and add a bit of theme to it. So it's kind of going down the Peglin route, but more of an action game. So if you ever played Peglin, it was kind of Peggle with a fantasy deck builder type element thrown into it. I really like everything I'm seeing here in terms of the art and the kind of juice of all of these kind of little zaps and stuff. So let's check it out. And Verdnault just basically said, let's see if there's a note. Just basically at the stage of considering whether to add more content and finish this for Steam. So I do have a set of scrubs in my... I have a dressing up box right next to my camera, which is where the wizard lives as well.
A wizard's tower tucked away in the Black Forest has been found by dark forces, and they are on their way.
Okay, so I'm not clicking to launch. It's launching automatically, and all I'm doing is kind of aiming it, which is quite a nice feeling. And then they sort of bite my wizard when they get up to that line. Really nice CRT effect that isn't too heavy. It's very easy to go overboard with these. I've been doing a lot of kind of full screen effects recently. I tend to turn them up really, really high initially and then gradually wind them down. Allow the wizard to move using A and D. Okay, run it back. So we can strafe. Control is nice. One small thing is it gets slightly visually confusing when the actual ball pops out. I think I would like a little bit of a build up to the moment when the ball is kind of cast. And it's because the ball and the line are the same color, but if there was just a little bit of a kind of charge up, like and like you could just kind of see, maybe fade the line away just as the ball comes out so we can see the ball better, because the line and the ball feel like they're obscuring each other. Most of the time when you have that kind of dot-based aiming system in a game like this, or Angry Birds or Worms or something, it's only there up until the point that you fire. And at the moment, it's there because you fire and it stays there, right? I feel like you need to like fade it for just like half a second as the ball comes out so that you get a chance to see the projectile, because otherwise it's kind of all getting in the way of itself a little bit. But I know that's a very minute detail and it's not necessarily what the dev is focused on right now. So we've got one upgrade that allows us to move the wizard. Now we can increase the damage of the ball, which I can't afford yet, or we can increase the radius of gem pickup. So I'm going to go for the damage, but I need one more gem before we can do that. This is a really nice structure. They've done a kind of no buster style skill tree incremental thing, and then the activity we're doing to drive that is the kind of unique gameplay thing, which is great. And I think all of those of you who are thinking about incrementals at the moment and like have got on the incremental hype train, I think this is a very good example of like you still have to care about what the moment to moment thing the player is doing is. And the more of you that go down the node buster game about creating a black hole kind of route, the later you're going to be on that particular kind of clone train, for want of a better word, and the less you're going to stand out. Whereas you do something like this, you know, you've got all of the proven appeal of that quick gathering of resources, and then straight into that upgrade loop of putting stuff on the tech tree. You've got all of that that's already been proven to work in those other games. Like, we know this works. We know people like this. But you're doing something slightly different to generate the resources and do that kind of satisfying bubble wrap popping activity. I need to collect the gems. Okay. Ah, with the mouse. Yeah, cool. So I can collect these much quicker. The firing's automatic, Spicy. Yeah, Spicy, I think you're right. The thing is, the thing that makes these games work is reasonably universal. I don't think it's like a trend that's going away. I think doing a short, casual game that takes 30 seconds to get some resources and then investing them in a tech tree is such a kind of fundamental thing that that's not going away, but you need to do different things with the core gameplay. And that's, I really like what they're doing here, because it feels like a good push in that direction. Spicy, the dev is called Verdnaut, but I think he's called Papa Murph on Discord. If you can't find this game on Discord to find the dev, then look for Negative Space. Yeah, the projectile is occasionally not going where I kind of where it says it's going to go, which is strange. Okay, we're going to reduce the cast time. I'm not super locked in, so we're probably not upgrading as quick as we should, but I'm dying quite easily as well. A really great way to test if a game is kind of casual or suits a casual audience is to see if people can have an unrelated conversation while they're playing it as well. And I think, you know, the thing about these games is obviously there are hardcore fans of them, but the reason they're so popular and have like such a big fan base is that they have a lot of the kind of design traits of a casual game, in the sense that they're very low stakes. You can't really lose progress in an incremental game. I mean, you can't. That's kind of a definitional part of an incremental game. So if you took any other incremental game and made it possible to lose progress, you wouldn't be playing an incremental game anymore. You'd just be playing like a traditional business tycoon simulator type thing. That was why it was so confusing when I went to work in a Roblox studio, because Roblox and Fortnite devs use the word tycoon to refer to incremental games. Like, this is a tycoon game, and it was like, you can't lose it though. How is this like Roller Coaster Tycoon? And it wasn't. It's just like they've got their own genre for, you know, games that number go up and can't go down kind of thing. I want to unlock the fireball. I think the color coding of this is slightly confusing. So red is stuff we can't afford, green is what we can currently afford, and the grey is stuff that's at max level. I think this is slightly confusing because the max level thing doesn't look kind of super celebratory, and the green is positive, which makes it sound like you've got it already. It feels like green feels like locked in. I would be tempted to the state for you can buy this currently to be like a slowly blinking kind of throbbing green or white or yellow or something. So it's very clearly kind of drawing your attention to it, and because it's moving and flashing, it's suggesting that this is like not indicative of something that you've already got that is fixed. And then the one that are max level, maybe this is like something. This is good. It's kind of showing that it's solid, right? Because it's got the frame around it. But there's something about the green that doesn't read as what it means to me. I want the poison ball and the basic ball. So we've got a set of different balls now, and they kind of all got their own cooldowns, which is the thing that's really nice about this now, is it's creating like a uneven rhythm of the different projectiles. So there are moments where you fire loads of the same thing, or loads of different things at once. You've got this little, you've got the cooldowns over here, and you've also got the radials on the target, which is quite nice. I'm forgetting to move my guy, and they're starting to shoot things at me now, which is cool. Yeah, there's a lot of nice stuff to learn here. It feels like it's really tapping into the incremental side of a Vampire Survivors as well, in a way that so many of the games that preceded Vampire Survivors didn't seem to understand. You know, every time I play a game that seems to be riffing on Vampire Survivors but is too focused on like being a skill game rather than a farming game, I sort of think that the person that played it didn't play Vampire Survivors for more than half an hour. Yeah, exactly. Tycoons in Roblox is just a totally different genre. It's what they call incremental games or clicker games. They just there's no way in which those were even meant to be linked to Roller Coaster Tycoon or Business Sims, and that kind of followed over into Fortnite later on, when after Fortnite Creative 2.0 launched, a lot of people just started copying game formats that had already worked in Roblox, and that means that that definition of Tycoon has followed over into Fortnite now as well. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that came from Flash. I think I probably stopped playing Flash games before that became a thing. Gunnar said, I can't remember the YouTuber, but there was a complaint about some current comfy games where they were relaxed, except for one section where they had to concentrate for a good few minutes leading to silence, yeah. I think we need to bring back the idea of casual games as a non-insult thing, because lots of hardcore gamers see it as an insult. I will... Oh, I think I just exited out of the game. What happened there? Oh, no, we're back. I'm going to cover it a little bit when I do the next video about difficulty. We've got a video essay coming up about difficulty, and I'll talk about like casual and hardcore design patterns in that a little bit. Jesper Juul's book, The Casual Revolution, is probably still one of the best definitions of what makes a game casual. But it's this kind of thing that you can kind of play the game without super concentrating on it, and also without having to like go and read wikis or be super invested in like learning the game, you know. And I think there's a lot of overlap there with what you were just saying, kind of with like how streamable the game is. And I know that that could be interpreted as like people getting the advice that they should dumb their games down and make them not require lots of concentration, but I think there's a sweet spot. If you wanted to make a very streamable game, there's a sweet spot where basically the game is tuned in such a way, which I think this game is already doing this quite well, where if I wasn't talking over this game and I was playing it on my own, I could super lock in and I would probably have like 3 times as much progress already. But I can play it in a sort of no-brained, half-paying attention way and still do okay. And this is a design pattern that has existed in casual games for a long time. It's existed since like PopCap games. Of, you know, you'll see a lot of mobile games have the star-based system where it's like you can go back and play levels and you need to get 5 stars in them, and as the game goes on you need to earn more stars to complete the game. Overcooked has that as well. I've played a few indie games that use that kind of system. And the reason those systems work so well is if you're not good at the game, you still beat the level, but you get 1 star and you make progress. If you're good at the game, you get 5 stars and you make more progress more quickly. But there's no one who just doesn't make any progress if they're no good, right? And then if you think of like the complete opposite of like a FromSoft game, where it's like you are punished for being bad, like you lose loads of progress for being bad. That's like the sort of ultra hardcore way of making a game. So you're kind of filtering out people that don't enjoy that kind of masochistic approach to difficulty by basically saying, you know, if you're not good at this game, you're not going to make any progress. The game is going to actively punish you for being bad at it. And that's fine. Like if that's your design ethos for the thing you're making, then that's okay. But there's a reason why that star-based system was used in so many games, and it's because it allows people to kind of win levels by being sort of okay, but also get an extra reward for being really good. And I think that's a good kind of design ethos to try and follow if you're trying to make something that you hope to go viral because a streamer plays it. Because if the game just requires 100% concentration at any given time, then it's gonna not be suitable for that sort of situation. I think one of the reasons why there's so much hype in the game dev community currently about incremental games, I talked about this a little bit when I reviewed Bite Me's MMO 1998, is that basically it's very rare. You've got a kind of weird survivorship bias where it's very rare for someone who can actually program and make games to prefer casual games as a player, because the sort of people who learn to program are going to have a particular type of psychology that's attracted to doing difficult things. And I think it's quite hard for small teams where everyone's a programmer, or solo developers where the like project lead is a programmer and like not a designer or an artist, like first and foremost they're a programmer. It's quite hard for those sorts of people to empathize with people that want simple, easy gameplay, because most of the games they play are like super grognard nerdy in some way. They're either about like Twitch difficulty or strategic difficulty, or like, you know, crazy Factorio efficiency puzzles and stuff like that. And it makes it very hard for them to understand why anyone would play a more casual type of game. So when something like incremental games come along, they think it's some kind of magical trend rather than just an example of the fact that a more casual game is going to have a larger audience, you know? It's not surprising that a more casual game has a larger audience if you kind of understand the reasons why people do or don't play particular types of games in terms of like their life experience and stuff. But if you're kind of stuck in your own taste, then a programmer is always going to think more complexity is better because they're a programmer and they have a programmer's brain. So, Spicy Bread said, this game feels almost a bit too quickly paced for me. Probably the right speed for a demo, but too fast for a full game. Yeah, that's a good... I mean, I'm going to move on to the next game now, but that's a really good observation, because when you are making a demo, particularly of something that has like a long upgrade path, you do want to speed things up so that people can experience more of the game quickly, especially because you're trying to test it, so you want feedback on the mid and late part of the game, rather than just like the first 10 minutes and the onboarding. So I would expect a Steam release of this game to be much slower, as you just suggested. And the other thing is, I mean, we've been having a kind of related parallel conversation, so I haven't been super focused on what all of these upgrades do. If they were a little bit more expensive to get, or they took a little bit longer to kind of unlock, I would be checking out what they do and making selections. At the moment, I've been just kind of buying whatever I can. So we've got a poison branch of the tree over here for the poison ball. We've got the lightning ball stuff over here. We've got the fire stuff over here. Thorn balls that do kind of thorn explosions. There's lots of nice stuff that really kind of plays off the fantasy of being a little wizard, which I quite like. I've joked before about the kind of fireball wizard trope, which is like, you know, if you use a wizard for your game, then the fantasy is a guy that can do loads of different stuff. It's not a guy that can cast one spell. And if you make a game that's just about shooting fireballs and it's a wizard, that's going to feel goofy. Change it to something where that's okay. Like a fire-themed superhero, it's okay for them to only shoot fireballs. A dragon, it's okay for them to only shoot fireballs. The central fantasy of a wizard is for them to have like an arsenal of lots of different spells. That's what people come to a game themed around wizards expecting. But yeah, this feels like it needs to slow down a little bit. I love the fact that we have actual themed branches of the tree. One of the things I really hate in skill trees is when it just feels totally random and there's no connection between the things. And they're just like, oh, you go on this node and it's attack speed, and then the node off of it is something to do with currency, and it's like, how are these things related? I want to feel like as I pursue a particular direction in the tree, that's like a subset of the tools available to me for my engine building. So we've got that here, and it seems like down here you've got kind of economy, treasury things, you've got shield stuff. So there's lots of examples of good practice. I think there's some stuff you could do here that makes the UX clearer. I would personally use a highlight for these that makes this look more temporary. I can't think of a better word to describe it. But when we're in this green state where it's basically saying you can afford this now, I think just like a gently kind of throbbing light border would better sort of communicate that this is a temporary kind of transitional state between levels. And then when they're fully upgraded, this could be like a kind of chunky gold border or something, so you get this satisfaction of seeing when they're fully upgraded. But I think the border states need some thought. I would also maybe even like spread this out a little bit more, because it's getting a little bit clustered here, so we can't see that this is its own branch from here. You know? I'm going to do one more loop. So I'm So I've got lightning balls, but I don't know which is triggering them. Do I have to, like, swap them in and out? What does Q do now? I love a diegetic skill tree. I mean, you could make this like a tree of knowledge type thing, like a... Not a full illustration of a tree, but some sort of like alchemical diagram that looks a bit like the... what's the Kabbalic diagram thing called? I can't remember. I mean, it's just called the Kabbalah, isn't it? Another thing you could do if you're testing a game like this is to have like an upgrade speed setting that people can just say, like, you could have a mode and you could frame it as easy, medium, hard, and it's just like a progression speed filter, and then that means that when you give it to your playtesters, you could say, you know, play it once on hard and once on easy and tell me what you think. And you don't need to tell them that the easy mode is basically the progression sped up 10%, and the hard mode is the version you'd expect it to be, and the medium mode is like 3 times faster or something. But that might be a neat way to test some of the stuff we've been talking about, is to just put a thing in there, put a toggle for it. Jokester says it's a go on the Steam release. Yeah, I think this is neat. I think, you know, do as much as you can to differentiate it from the No Buster games. Make this, I think a lot of the work, the actual game, the only beef that I've had with the game so far is the projectile's a little bit hard to see because of the aiming system. It doesn't always feel like it fully follows the arc. Everything else about this is sort of super crunchy and satisfying, and I like it. I keep forgetting I can press... I keep forgetting I can strafe, although I don't need to use it very often. But I feel like most of the work is on the actual skill tree itself. Making the skill tree a little bit easier to understand, a little bit more satisfying to interact with and to like level up areas. But yeah, this already feels pretty close to being good to go, I would say. My favorite diegetic skill tree is the castle in Rogue Legacy. Yeah, it feels like there's some missed opportunities for how this could be themed. You know, this could be a scroll, and it could look like you're mapping out a dungeon. The thing about like magic symbols and stuff, there is a lot of things where you can have something that looks like a map of a place that is also looks like kind of runes, like the constellation maps that you used to upgrade in Skyrim, where it's like the star charts. That's kind of cool. You know, the original magical skill tree, the Kabbalah. But yeah, that one feels really good. Don't really have much else to kind of add on that one. There's a few things that feel like kind of low-hanging fruit in terms of how they could be improved, but there's nothing about that game that makes me go, yeah, you shouldn't finish this or release it or anything. The next one is called Out of Sight, Out of Mind. Don't think I've seen this one before. I try and play the ones that we haven't seen before first. The game still needs balancing, but I want to know your thoughts on the game feel, aesthetics, and mechanics. Any feedback would be appreciated. I need to remember to press my little keyboard macro. I finally set up a keyboard macro that splits after each game so that I can save all the game footage separately. Ah, okay, yeah. I've seen. Yeah, this looks fun. This is another incremental. I've seen it on the Discord. It's got a really kind of fun theme and art style. Throw trash in a big hole. That's it until it isn't. Okay, so we're gonna get a kind of dark room style incremental with strange unfolding things, which is great because that was the only thing that really made this genre appealing to me when I first encountered it. Was the kind of the weird mystery of what happens next. It's not a genre of game that I generally play out of choice, if I'm being totally honest. But the ones that I did used to play back in the day were the ones that had like weird secrets and stuff to unlock rather than being kind of just pure number increase fantasies. So we've got a pile of trash and we're trying to put it down a hole, and this is a neat mechanic. It looks more chaotic than it is. So it looks like there's some directional stuff, but there's not really, because basically when I pop this, it will just kind of pick a point on the direct line between where it is and the hole it's meant to go to, and it will kind of bounce to that, and it looks like a physically and potentially random thing, but once you feel it a few times you'll see it's not. You can't miss. It's just they need more or less taps depending on how far away they are. It's kind of a really nice little game feel thing. We're gonna get this guy. As I say, a little dude to cart trash to the hole. That's all I've ever wanted. It is egg game core. That's exact. That Pepper. That's exactly right. It's even got the kind of art vibes of egg game. Yeah, spicy. I sort of, yeah. Unfolding is the core appeal, yeah. So, I don't know if you've been following MMO 1998. I played it for like a couple of hours. I quite enjoyed it, and then you might have seen Bite Me's videos in the follow-ups to all like the bad reviews and stuff. I had a look at the bad reviews, and largely they are from people that want incremental games to have more of that in. You know, it kind of feels like the people that were giving bad feedback on MMO 1998, they wanted, or MMO 98, sorry, I'm adding extra numbers. They just wanted it to have more of that kind of mystery of secrets unlocking and stuff as the game gets further in, which I think is, you know, a fair thing to expect if you've played more than like 10 of those games, because that's what the better ones do. But I think it's a shame that they got kind of review bombed over it, or I don't think they got review bombed, but they got quite a lot of negative reviews that I hope they can respond to some of those, though, because it does feel a bit like it's kind of a case of those things do matter, and they might not matter to like 90% of the audience, but the 10% of the audience that they do matter to are like the sorts of people that are gonna be a more important part of the audience, because they're the ones who are more likely to be like driving conversations about the genre and like recommending games and having channels about those types of games and stuff. And I think there's always that kind of dynamic, I think, where there's stuff that you might think you don't need to care about or do for your game, but the people who do care about it are the real sickos, and the real sickos are kind of the taste makers for that genre fandom, you know? That's good. 69% is good. You know, for a 3-month project, I think that's really good. I really want that game to do well for them, because I want it to kind of teach them that it's, you know, it's worth putting the effort into aesthetics and stuff, because I think that game is incredibly strong in terms of what they've done with the music and the UI design, and just it just really feels like a passion project in a way that most of the stuff that I've seen them do doesn't. And I said all this in my video, and I'm sure I came across as deeply patronizing as I did that, but I'm not interested in people just like hacking the matrix and lucking out with some sort of dopamine farm game. Like, I want to see people make interesting games, and then if they manage to be successful making interesting games that deserve to exist on some sort of creative level, then I'm super happy for people. But that game feels like that, you know. It feels like it's got all of these in-jokes in that are just genuinely coming from a place of like caring about that genre of game and that theme, and I really want it to do well for them, because it's just so clearly not just let's make one of these because that is what will make us successful, and there's a little bit more of a thought gone into like what they should make as a unit, which I want to see more people do. To make the trash more valuable, we're gonna get gonna see our increments incrementalize more incrementally now, or less incrementally now, because we've got some stonks. I think they should just keep supporting that game. I think if you've made a game in 3 months and it's made that much money and it's at 69%, to me, I think it makes much more business sense to spend 3 more months making that game into the thing that people wanted it to be, and getting the reviews up to, you know, 80, 90, and making like 4, 5, 10 times as much money. Makes way more sense to double down on that thing when it's already shown a degree of success than to start a new thing. When it's already shown like such a proportionally large amount of success compared to anything else they've done. You know, put one person on starting a new project, go through your backlog of other projects, and like get someone architecting the basics of another project, but then put everyone else on just responding to the complaints in the reviews of that one, and treat it as a sort of stealth early access, you know? I don't think it makes sense to like unilaterally tell people you're not going to work on the game anymore when it's... I don't know. I think... So, Pepper, I mean, you know, it's easy for me to say this stuff because I'm not doing this kind of stuff full time. And when I do eventually release the game I'm currently working on, it will very much be a case of I'll put it out, see how people respond to that. If it does badly, I'll just start working on something else. So, you know, for me, it's still like a kind of glorified hobby because the channel is what I do as a business. I think it's a bad move to just like categorically say you're not working on it anymore when it's the most successful thing you've made so far. I don't need to click, I just need to hold. I think if something's the most successful thing you've made so far, it would make much more sense to just say, look, we're going to do X more updates for it. I mean, when we release Golem Gourmet, I mean, we might do early access with it anyway, so that kind of, it just makes this kind of obvious, but I would usually have a release plan that says, whether it's early access or not, we do a release, we have a certain date where we say, okay, this is a date where we're going to do a patch to fix bugs. There's another date that's like for adding content that people really want, or I wanted to do but we didn't have time to before launch. You know, you just have like a roadmap of a couple of things that you promised to do, and that builds trust with the audience. But you do it in a way that's like a reasonably vague promise, right? It's like patch 1.1, fix the worst bugs. Patch 1.2, add this little bit of content we've been meaning to add. Patch 1.3, do something else. You don't tell people exactly what you're going to do, so you keep it flexible. This is how like live service games as service games work. You kind of loosely tell people what you're going to do. You give them a vague, broad promise that on this date we're going to do some of this type of stuff. We can speed the dudes up. Excellent. And then you fix dates for that. And that all builds trust and makes your audience like what you do. I think it's different if you're like a studio that has a kind of a pedigree of putting out lots of good stuff, and you release a middling game and you think, okay, well, we've done better in the past, so let's just do the next thing. But I think if it's the best thing that you've released and has had a lot of more positive feedback and has made a lot more money, I would double down on it. Extreme. I'm gonna have to move on from this, but I kind of want to see where it goes. It is hypnotic. It's a really nice mix of things, of it being like, it's thematically gross, but the art is quite chill and calming, even though it's people taking trash and putting it in a hole. Yeah, giggles, that stuff is cheesy, but it is true. You know, it's why I spent 10 minutes at the start of this stream, like, explaining what's changing about the channel and why I'm doing it and stuff like that. Lots of people don't care. But the people who care really care. Oh, that's good to hear, shout out. I hadn't watched that video yet, but that's neat to hear. We got an asteroid. Oh, interesting. Is this stuff going to be more valuable? Let's see. Yeah, the asteroid fragments are more valuable. That's cool. So that's going to spawn one of those every 60 seconds. That's a really cool way of doing the kind of cookie clicker level up of what we're collecting thing. Spawn a little dude to mine the trash pile for you. Produces one trash every second. Okay. What I really like here is that everything here turns into a toy. Or like some sort of thing that enriches this scene and makes it more pleasing to watch. Makes it kind of funny to think about thematically as a little story. There's just a lot of lovely stuff here. I'm a very firm believer in like the appeal of a lot of games just being it is an interactive cartoon. And I think, you know, I'm often comically critical of Unreal on this channel as a game engine. And it's not the engine itself, although it's been the most difficult one to learn whenever I've sat down with any of the 3D engines. But I think the way that Unreal is marketed and sort of set up by default is as this kind of Hollywood grade 3D graphics engine, and it is so strongly appealing to people that want to make their own game but want it to look like a AAA game, and that takes you so far away from the idea of, you know, originally video games just being a cartoon you could interact with. And I think that is such a useful and healthy way to think about indie games, smaller scope indie games. And I think it's kind of like that thing I was talking about earlier, where I was talking about programmers and their tastes, and how when programmers learn about something like incremental games, they think they've found some magic trend, rather than just like a really basic concept, which is most people that play games don't have programmers' brains and actually want to do something relatively simple and not solve a super hard problem or do something with incredibly high skill expression, because they're not like masochists in the way that you often have to be to learn how to do something like programming. And they sort of you get this a similar thing with like visual tastes, where a lot of people that are techie don't want something that looks kind of goofy and childish. When they start working on their own games, they want something that looks kind of like either super realistic or super kind of grown up and like sleek and stuff. And it just doesn't really chime with a lot of what I think people find charming or interesting about indie games. And whereas think of it as a cartoon you can interact with in some way of thinking about it is much closer to, I think, how a larger percentage of the audience feel about these things. Because when you get into cartoons, you're dealing with very kind of I mean, we talked about this on the Game Developers Library podcast when we did Scott McCloud, the book about comic books. It was like, the more abstract a character is, the more anyone can relate to it, because it stops being something that you read as a specific human being in the world and starts being like just a quintessential human that anyone can kind of relate to type thing. And that's what makes characters like this so appealing. LD said, where did the mechanic of clicking something to get it closer or let minions pick it up come from? I saw another... I mean, this is something that you will get in incremental games, but also any game that is about managing efficiencies. Like Stardew Valley and Graveyard Keeper have a degree of this. In order to have like an economy where you can have an activity that gradually upgrades to a point it can be automated, the basic activity has to have some level of friction from the player, right? So there would be no point in these guys existing. I mean, there would be... You could have like one guy collecting stuff for you, and then you upgrade it and you have more guys, and that would still work. But even just getting the first guy feels like a massive upgrade if it means you no longer have to do this, right? So this basic action of like popping the stuff along... At the beginning of the game, it's like a neat little thing that's enjoyable to do. You don't want to do it for very long, so you get the upgrade, and then the thing that's pleasing about that, and something you should sort of understand if you intend to make incremental games, is that the sort of base activity that you're doing, it's not the same in all of these games, but with clickers, the basic activity you're doing changes in frequency or nature as the game goes on, as a result of like the set of upgrades that you get. So we're going to get to a point where I don't need to do this at all, you know? So you have to have, in order for automation to mean something, you have to have some level of friction for it to gradually eliminate. And in factory games like Factorio, the fact that you have to be a little guy running around building everything and doing a bunch of stuff yourself is what gives the factory value once you get it up and running, because now you've got like a different stage of the game where the basic loop of the game is just fundamentally changed. And that's what's kind of pleasing about playing those games over time, is feeling the shape of the game change as you get the upgrades. Because the upgrades kind of tend towards automation, and that kind of takes away some of the stuff you had to do before. Like, imagine you're playing Minecraft. If I could go for the most universally kind of known example. Imagine you're playing Minecraft, and the first time you get the ability to build loads of TNT, you've got loads of resources, and you build loads of TNT, And instead of going down into your mine and digging away with a pickaxe, you set up all this TNT and you set it off in one go. And suddenly, what you would have taken, you know, 2 hours to mine with a pickaxe is just blown up in one moment. That's a really cool moment in that game that is enabled by the kind of economy of that game, the different toys available in that game. I think any game where you've got crafting, upgrade economies, things you do yourself versus things you can have done for you by tools and automations, you've got to think about these kind of trade-offs and how to make the game feel interesting as you advance through those different stages, and like having some sort of friction for you to gradually remove by upgrading tools or making the clicking entirely redundant eventually. Like, I'm not clicking on this at all anymore because this guy is digging it for me. And then if I get another one of those, we're going to have 2 of those guys, so there's going to be more trash coming out. That's going to change the dynamic back where I might end up clicking more because the trash is coming out at a rate that's too fast for the little guys on this side. So it kind of creates this really nice push and pull where the game is just going to constantly feel different. That is called Out of Sight, Out of Mind. I feel like it's making a neat little kind of philosophical point as well that you can maybe ruminate on in your own time. Let me just see what the next one is. Another one we haven't seen yet. Thanks, Red Spine, for sending this one over. This is called C-ARD. C-ARD Auto Battle Roguelike Deck Builder. It's all of the buzzwords. We've even got some sort of Balatro VFX. Let's check it out. So if you are watching this on the VOD, I will be adding links to the games that can be played. Some of them will be closed playtests so that there won't be a link. But when I add the timestamps, I will add links to all the games.
The gaze of the all-seeing covers the entire world. Humanity hides in the walled villages, moving at night to avoid being
Ambushed by the monsters who answered his call. This is your starting character. Click on it to access its details panel. Okay. Music feels a little bit too heavy for a game where I'm reading and strategizing. Be wary of heavy drums, particularly in thinky turn-based games and puzzle games. The drums are the standout thing. It's very rare that you will find a card game or a puzzle game that has like very banging drum-driven music in it. And even if you go back to stuff like early StarCraft, they already worked that out. Like the music psychology of games where players are thinking a lot. The drums in particular, very sparse. You go and check out the music on the early Warcraft and StarCraft games. It's almost like that game show music where it's just like, it's tense and it's building and there might be some skittering hi-hats going tick, 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 but it's not like driving, which is more for like action sequences. It is time for a fight. Enemies will appear for you to fight. Combat resolves automatically. Click the button to launch the fight when you're ready. Okay. So basically, he's got a string of actions that are represented as cards, but these are just his kind of auto-battler things he's going to do. With their current speed stat of 3, characters will take their turn every round. When that happens, they'll get to play one of their action cards, grey cards. Okay. Cards enter a cooldown phase when played. Their cooldown count is decreased by 1 at the end of the round. Okay. I feel like there's a lot of stages in this tutorial that could be trimmed down. When a character takes its turn but does not have an available action card to play, the icon will show up. This turn is lost. Okay. You'll get to rest between each fight. Campfires will heal your characters and give you a chance to distribute cards. Yeah, this feels like it could just teach itself the first time it happens. Each class has access to a specific set of golden cards. They activate automatically and do not count towards the maximum number of held cards. So Traveller, on reaching Campfire, gain 10... This is way too small as well. This is far too small. This text. All of the kind of graphic design and font choices look quite nice together. I'm not seeing anything that looks kind of super tacky in terms of how it all fits aesthetically, but the cards are way too small to read when they're popping up in that context. Choose a reward for Gavin. Okay. Mr. V Portal said, whenever you put... You're making a turn-based soccer game, and when you use drums, it always sounded off to me and could not figure out why. Yep. The way I would think about it is that drums are for dancing too. You know, music is all emotional, whatever it's for. And music in games is always doing emotional stuff. But drums are for dancing too. And in gameplay terms, that would correspond to, like, reaction-based Twitch gameplay, where you're, like, driving, racing, jumping around type thing. So it feels appropriate in that situation. It doesn't feel appropriate to be, like, thinking and reading and have drums playing, because they engage, like, a different... It's almost more of a, like, lizard brain type thing, where you don't, you know, dancing is not about thinking, it's about not thinking and just doing. Reacting, I guess, is the gameplay word, right? Choose a reward for Gavin. Robin, when you I haven't played Wild Frost, but check out what the instrumentation is on the drums as well, because it can come down to, like, how heavy it is and how it's mixed. Like I said, with the StarCraft example, it's not that there are no drums in the StarCraft soundtrack, but they're, like, it's more kind of dedicated to feeling like a constant build-up that goes nowhere. See, it's that kind of game showy, like, kind of thing. I wish there was a way I could turn it off, to be honest. I can't. It's just too much. The tutorial is too long. It feels like it's trying to overtly teach lots of things that should just sort of explain themselves every time they happen. If that makes sense. Choose a reward for Gavin. Block potion. Gain armor. Fire potion. Apply 5. Burn. Let's go for the aggro set, because that's fun when you don't have long to play something. Little town. We get to recruit a character. Strawberry or Coletta? I'm going to go for Coletta. The scholar. We've got a new character. Let's see what the scholar brings to the party. Okay. That, again, that feels quite redundant. Observe that a scholar has a speed of only 2, which means they'll have 2 turns every 3 rounds. They also gain XP for casting spells, but yeah, okay. Let's give the scholar the spell cards you looted earlier. Okay. So this is something where I'm actually doing something rather than just being told how something works. Every moment in this game where it's just told me how something passive works, I'm not going to remember. Those are things that I would learn just through repetition and the game explaining them each time they happen in some way, rather than the kind of tutorial interrupting to say, now the game is going to do this thing that you have no involvement in. That's not something that's not the type of information that people retain. People retain information where the game says, now do this, and you do it, and you see the result of it. That's the sort of thing that's worth overtly tutorializing. I think anything where something automatic is happening in the game and you're adding a tutorial panel to explain what's happening is kind of a waste of time because people aren't going to remember that information. What you need to do is just make sure that the automatic thing communicates how it works every time it does it, so people can just learn how it works by repetition. You can give cards to your characters by dragging them in a row. Okay. Gavin gets the fire. She gets corrode. Is that okay? Can we do that now? Can I put that in? I want to put the burn before the smack. Okay, we finished the tutorial, so we can go back and play the main game now. Yeah, it's not even... Yeah, I mean, it's just a form of explaining that I just don't think is very effective. Okay, Scholar, take you. We don't have any cards to give you yet. We can change their order. This is a little bit fiddly. There's like just a... It's all a little bit too close here. You need to either move them further apart or make this bounding box a little bit narrower so it's kind of around here, because this particular interaction is very fiddly and easy to mess up. I like the central premise of this. So it's auto battler, but each character has a deck that they're cycling through. I think the tutorial just needs to think a little bit about when is it helpful to explain things, and when should they just be when should the focus be on making the thing more self-explanatory every time it happens in the game versus telling the player what's happening in a tutorial which they won't remember because they didn't get to do anything. She's going to get a frost potion. We're going to give her spells. No, now can I... Now I can do their deck building stuff, I think. Yeah, here we go. So frost potion on her. He's going to have his knife throws. I want to take Smack out of his deck, but I don't think I can. I think there might be like some advanced thing that we need to do in order to actually remove stuff from their deck. Kane, I have a full video on Steam demos that I think you should watch if you have any questions about demos. I'm going to have particular answers to that are more based on... I don't know. Whenever people ask me questions about business and publishing, my answers are not really in line with what other people will tell you. And the reason for that is that I don't really care... This is going to sound really harsh, right? I don't really care about helping every individual who wants to make and release games to do that. Because there's already enough games. I would like people to have reality checks about the quality of what they're doing and to work out whether the projects they're making are learning projects or commercial projects. And I think I talk about this quite a bit. If you go and watch my video about Steam demos, you go into my videos, go back to, I don't know, it was like last September or something. The difference between a demo versus a playtest, all of these things. And I think when people ask questions like, how much should be in a demo, it always feels like you're trying to get someone to give you license to be lazy. And you just want someone to say, oh, it's fine, just do this, you know, and like give you license to be lazy. That you will know from playing other games how long a reasonable demo feels. But then your kind of developer brain will want to be lazy and go, well, you know, I'm only one person, so I shouldn't have to do X, Y, Z. The audience for your game doesn't care how many people you are, how experienced you are, how long you've been doing anything. So if you say I'm making something like Hades and I want to know how much should be in the demo, it'd be like, well, the answer is how much was in Hades' demo. Yeah, I know. Well, the thing is, if you're already... another way I'd look at it, right? A demo is a sample of a game in order to sell the game. So if you're at the stage where you're putting a demo on Steam, you should already know how big the final version of your game is, right? So if your game has 12 parts, whatever those parts are, I'm just using it as like a fraction. Your game has 12 parts, and you say your demo is going to be 3 of those 12 parts or 4 of those 12 parts, then that's how big your demo needs to be. But if you don't know how big the final form of your game is, then it's not at a stage where you should be thinking about putting a Steam demo up, because that's what you're making then is a research and development playtest, which isn't a demo. A demo is a commercial test drive of a game that is close to being finished. Is there not still a demo of Hades? I'm going to quickly check now. Well, see, this doesn't help, you know. I wish publishers would leave demos up after a game was released. And I know that there's probably a business reason for stopping it, or when a game is so well known, they just think, oh, we don't need a demo anymore, because people will work out if they want to play it by watching people play it. I already have it in my library, so I don't know if that's changing what shows up in the store. Yeah. So Tim said the demo needs to contain enough for players to experience enough of what your vision is for the game and wanted to see more of it. I think it also needs to, if your game seems like it's made by a small developer, it also just needs to prove to the audience that you can make the rest of the game. Because people have been burnt a lot of times by games like under-delivering on what they promise. And like an example that I used in that demo video was like the game where there's a bunch of fake systems that are shown in the demo. Because the game I'm thinking of was this first-person stealth RPG, and the demo was just this tutorial level, and there were all of these menus for like crafting and magic and stuff that were hinting at, oh, the full game will have this. And it's like, okay, well, this isn't a vertical slice then, because you're not showing me a portion of the game where I get to use those parts. So looking at the game and seeing it's made by a small developer and not like a big commercial team with lots of experience, that rings alarm bells for me as a player, because I think, well, you're telling me the game is going to have these things in it, and I don't even know if you can actually build those things because you haven't shown me them in the demo. So like the demo should probably be the middle of the game in that kind of case, because the first level you've made and presented as a demo doesn't have all of the parts of the game that I would need to judge in order to know whether or not the game you're making executes those things well. This is a neat idea. Yeah, back to this game. This is a neat idea. I feel like it maybe takes a little bit too long to get to a point where these characters and what they're doing feels different from run to run. That's my kind of gut instinct on this. I want a way to speed combat up. I want this all to be a little bit bigger. I'm on a big screen and all of this writing still looks very, very small. I like the core system. I think the core system is really neat. I'm wondering if there's a way I can remove the basic smack power from my deck. I mean, it's not really a deck, is it? It's just they're cooldowns, and when the cooldowns are gone, they trigger again. I don't know who Dominic Armato is. If I'm gonna look it up, if it's Paulie from The Sopranos, I'm gonna laugh. I don't know who. No, I don't know who that is. I mean, I probably do know him from something, but probably. I'm just always wary of like publishing and marketing questions, because so much of the culture that we have around this stuff is just starting from the assumption that everyone should finish their game and put it on Steam, and I'm not really of that mindset. I think it just leads to the platform being, from a gamer's perspective, it leads to the platform being full of slop, and from a kind of learning perspective, it just leads to lots of people being very disheartened with their games not doing very well because they treated them as commercial projects when they were really learning projects. And we've got a kind of scene here where, for some reason, it seems incredibly controversial to tell people that learning projects are not necessarily commercially viable products. I'm sure it's the same in other things as well. You know, people get the same thing with making music, where they just think that everything they ever write and record needs to go on Spotify or whatever. Yeah, Kane, I'm not responding to you specifically. I'm just explaining why I find those kind of questions just generally I'm sure you can build a game, but being an engineer doesn't necessarily make someone a good game designer or a good creative lead, which are like the things that players actually interact with when they play your game. You know, the code is what makes the game work at a basic level, and you need it to be good, but we've seen plenty of games that run perfectly fine and are well engineered but aren't fun, or aren't appealing. So when someone that I don't know asks me questions about like publishing or what game they should make or whatever in a very broad sense, I always just think, well, you know, if someone that you'd never met asked whether they should open a restaurant, you would be like, I don't know, games and releasing games that is really not super valid unless you make it more contextual to that person, which is not what YouTube is good for. But people want it to be good for. Just delete all this stuff. That's not what I'm trying to download. I want Hack Attack. Yeah, it's not that it's annoying. I just feel like an ethical kind of drive to not oversimplify things, you know? I think I think the desire to have everything super simplified is usually not a great thing. Because when people want to be told this is the 100% proven route to success, it usually kind of indicates that they're not really at a stage where they should be kind of running their own business or doing their own thing, because they're still expecting other people to tell them what to do. So kind of the only reason I would, having experienced it for the first time recently myself, the only reason I would tell people to set up a Steam page early isn't actually for outward facing reasons of like having the Steam page so other people can go there. But one of the things you will find when you open a Steam page is that it is incredibly overwhelming, the amount of stuff you have to do. So I would advise people not to open a Steam page when they think they need one, and to start doing it a month before, because the volume of things that you need to fill out, it's just a lot. There's a lot of stuff on there. So I don't know why people say that you need to make a Steam page ASAP thing. But in practice, I would say it's kind of worth doing for that reason alone, if for no other reason. But it's just like anything. Most things take longer than you think they're going to. Damages closer range enemies. Level up Seeker cooldown. Collect data from farther away. Okay, so the data is our XP. Yeah, everything, you kind of have to start anything sooner than you expect it to do what you want it to do, you know? This channel was running for, I think I started getting monetized in about 4 or 5 months, which is very, very quick for a YouTube channel, but that's still 4 or 5 months of treating it like a, 10 to 20 hour a week side hustle before it was showing any signs of being a commercially viable thing to run this YouTube channel. And then after that, I think the channel had been going for, how long was it? About 9 months before we had enough Patreon supporters for me to go almost full-time on it. And when I say almost full-time, I mean in 2025, about a third of my income came from doing the How to Market a Game course crossovers with Chris Zukowski. And about a quarter of my income came from doing freelance design work for other people. Some of which would have been with on types of games that I generally don't want to work with, I would say. And now we've got up to a point where the channel is my full-time job, and I can say no to certain types of design freelancing. For example, if it's in like free-to-play or something I just don't want to do anymore, I can basically do freelancing that is only on indie projects that I think are cool and interesting, which is good. But that's taken like 2 years of work. And everything's a little bit like that, Every part of your game you work on is going to take a bit longer than you initially expect it to. There'll be stages in, particularly when you're like learning a new process, like learning a new tool or learning a new genre or learning a new asset pipeline or whatever. There's always going to be stages that you just didn't know existed. And filling out the bazillion things that are required to launch a game on Steam is one of those things, like a micro example of that. This is cool. I like this. I mean, I have worked on quite a few free-to-play gacha games. And one of the reasons I set the channel up was because I was like, well, how can I do something that is related both to doing game design and teaching game design that doesn't require me to work on free-to-play gacha games, which is where all the jobs are, and doesn't require me to work in a university, which I have problems with, and allows me to focus entirely on people's cool indie projects. And, you know, the broad takeaway is that if you want to do a business doing anything, you have to go through this weird negotiation back and forth between what you want, what you're capable of doing, and what other people want you to do, which is the same as, I've talked about it a couple of times on the channel, but Ikigai, which is this sort of like Japanese self-help philosophy thing about how to be happy. But it's also kind of how to be broadly successful, because I've read business theory books that have very similar concepts. It's like, you know, align what you want to do with what you're able to do and what other people want from you, and you will usually be successful. So someone said the sizes are different from each other. I quite like it though. I don't think that's necessarily... I mean, there are different size enemies in Vampire Survivors, but it takes a while. I wouldn't necessarily say it's kind of core to the formula working. It's hurting my eyes a little bit. It is an icky guy. Yeah, I get that. I mean, not chronic fatigue specifically, but that kind of need to have a realistic understanding of what you can personally do. Mine is social battery because of autism and stuff. Quite outgoing. I'm not like the type of autistic person that likes to be alone all the time, but there are certain types of social performance, like having to be professional in a call or something, that tire me out so much. It's very different from this, where I'm like reading the chat every so often and monologuing the rest of the time. Doesn't feel like socializing in the same way as like having to be in an office call with loads of particular types of social dynamics and stuff. Yucky fella. Yeah, someone's trying to get me to do a collaboration recently that involved some sort of like live streams where there would be like lots of people on, like lots of creators on cam at the same time doing something together, and they were quite long, and I was just like, I don't want to do that. I think I will get tired and bored and come across really badly. Yeah, I mean, I have made music outside the channel. That's why I put the music videos in, you know, because it's a fun way of doing that. I have a band. I haven't done anything with the new band yet. I'm trying to work out what to do with that. Ah, the Pac-Man ghosts. They're the equivalent of the bats. They're the speedy enemies. That's great. I want to do one more go at that. I didn't really feel like I was kind of taking in what the upgrades did, but just the basic activity felt really nice. Yeah, a couple of years ago, I used to make really moody dark music, and then I spent a little while exclusively doing musical comedy a few years before I started this channel, and that was funny to do. And then recently, my personal music has sort of ended up somewhere in the middle, where it's kind of like it's serious music, but it occasionally has kind of silly lyrics and stuff like that. So, working on that with a new band, but it's very hard to kind of work out what's the point of even recording and releasing music at the moment in the world that we're currently in. So I'll find a way eventually. But what sort of music does the band make? It's kind of bluesy post-punk, so it's a little bit kind of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. It's a little bit Viagra Boys, that kind of stuff. I've been really lucky. I put a thing. I follow all of these like local WhatsApp groups for different things. There's one that's just like loads of local dads helping each other out. It's just like, hey, does anyone have this cable? And there's another one that's kind of local digital creatives, and another one that is local electronic musicians. I went in the electronic musicians one, and I was like, hey, does anyone play an instrument but not rock music, and you kind of play like R&B and dance and stuff like that? And I found a guitarist and a keyboard player through that, who are used to playing together in a kind of church worship band, and they're used to just like improvising for ages, and they're just kind of perfect for the type of band that I wanted to make, which was like a sort of R&B driven band that wasn't just a rock band kind of thing. And yeah, that's been quite fun to do, but we just haven't recorded anything yet. Caravan Palace. No, I haven't. We've got the band Pigeon local to us. I don't know if you know Pigeon. They're like a sort of psychedelic post-punk Afrobeat kind of band. They're a little bit like Witch. There's a band called Witch. We Intend to Cause Havoc that are similar. I love that kind of stuff. Like when you're getting kind of New Order-y, Joy Division type sounds mixed in with kind of world music and Talking Heads type stuff. I love all of that kind of stuff. Give me like really dancey music with slightly depressing or insane lyrics, and I'm all over it. But yeah, the music on the channel, I used to make it all myself just for fun, because I thought it would be fun to like break up stuff by having different media and everything. Like some people hate it because there's a type of YouTube viewer that is very tutorial brained, and they only go on YouTube to be told exactly what to do, and they don't go on it to like engage with creators as people, or, you know, watch anything as entertainment. And I find that really interesting. Like the last video I did, for every like 10 people that were like, haha, the songs are great, this is the best thing you've ever done, there's one person that was just like, stop trying to be funny, stop doing these songs, just do the serious stuff. And it's like, yeah, you know, by all means give me feedback on the specifics of what I'm doing if you feel like I've got something wrong. But don't like tell me what format or tone I should do, because that's kind of fundamental to what I'm doing on the platform. And if I was going to take that advice, I just wouldn't be doing the channel in the first place. You know, I intend for it to be slightly silly edutainment type stuff. And that works for me as something I enjoy doing and feel proud of. Whereas, you know, those of you who've been watching for a while will know I did a bunch of Q&A videos like last summer, and I ended up taking a lot of them down because I just felt like they weren't what I wanted to do with a YouTube channel. I don't want to sit there and give people advice on what they should do with their... You know, I do that to a degree, but I'm not... I think a lot of the stuff that you can get from a channel like this is attitudinal rather than about the specifics of what you should do. Like there's a type of people that want to be instructed, and they want to be told exactly what they should do in order to be successful. And I think that kind of generally shows a lack of maturity. And a lot of what I'm really trying to model is an attitude of curiosity and playfulness and experimentation and putting hard work into things just to try them out as well. Because a lot of internet humor is there's the like kind of meta level joke about a lot of things people make on the internet where it's like, this is funny because someone put too much effort in. And the kind of people that try to make memes using AI will never get this. That like, when you look at someone's meme, the amount of time it took them to draw that thing on MS Paint or Photoshop that thing together is part of the humor. It's part of the joke. And you're not just sharing the actual content of the joke, but like the effort is part of what makes the thing funny. And there's people that really appreciate that, and then there's people that are just like, no, I came here for one thing, give me this one thing, help me in my life in this one way. And the thing about edutainment is it's like, edutainment is really good for introducing people to something if they're totally new to it. So, you know, like the channels like the game design channels, like Game Maker's Toolkit and Extra Credits, I think are fantastic, and more developers should watch them. A lot of developers don't watch them because they're not interested in game design and they just want to know how to code the game and then how to make money from the game, and all the stuff in the middle about how to make the game actually good they don't care about. So they sort of miss out on those sorts of channels. But those are incredibly good at introducing people to game design. They're not necessarily good at getting into like the very, very nitty-gritty stuff, and that's because as edutainment they have to like appeal to the largest possible audience and like make every video be about Zelda or Hollow Knight or something that's going to grab people's attention. They're good for those sorts of people, and then it's good for people who are like already at a particular intellectual level with the thing, and they're there more for the entertainment, right? So I love channels like Cool Ghosts and People Make Games, but I'm mainly watching them because I kind of like the people that make them, and I kind of find it a chilled out way to spend my free time. And I'm under no illusion when I watch edutainment content that I'm learning something. It's just, I want to be entertained by something that's reasonably intelligent where maybe I'm going to learn something by accident as a little side thing. And then you got these, the people that want to just learn something. They want to get something out of it immediately that they can use. And it's mainly because they've been using YouTube for tutorial videos forever, and they've never really kind of engaged with like more silly, entertaining games content. Like, I feel like what I do, a lot of the time, it's closer to what someone like Brian David Gilbert does than Thomas Brush or anyone like that that is like actively kind of, you know, describing them as a games educator. And a lot of the people that the channel attracts just don't have any history of watching an Any Austin or, you know, even just the more playful side of the game dev content scene, like people like Juniper. Folks just aren't interested in that because they feel like as soon as someone is being a bit goofy and silly that they're not taking what they do seriously, which is just not how things work in the creative industries, I think. And there's obviously lots of reasons that people develop that attitude over time. And some of it comes from their education of like, you know, if you've trained in computer science or something and you feel like you need to be professional in a particular type of way, and like, why is this game designer being all silly? We're in a serious business, that kind of thing. Sometimes it's from your home background or like what culture you come from, and it's like, no, I need to take this thing deeply seriously. We can't be silly about it. But yeah, there's definitely a clash there with who my content gets served to, because we're all just put in the same bucket. If I look at the channels people also watch that watch this channel, we're just put in the same bucket. I would love to break out of the game dev bucket one day and just be in the kind of middle brow games culture bucket with like Jacob Geller and Any Austin, and not be in the game dev bucket, because the amount of people that just get annoyed with anything that isn't 100% educational material is very, very frustrating. Spicy said if I could learn everything by listening to a guy sing about it, I just would. That's funny. I want to do multiplayer streams. Burning Flurber, the band I mentioned earlier is called Pigeon, just spelt the regular way. They're a band with Fale Noike, I think I'm pronouncing his name right. He's like a kind of Afrobeat artist. Well, yeah, Robin, that's why I call it. It's a lot of it is game dev themed manosphere culture. The first thing I check when someone asks me if I want to be on their podcast is if they've ever had any women on. And that, to me, that's not even... And it should be a social justice thing, right? It should be like, oh, I won't support your podcast by going on it if it doesn't have any women on or if it's all white men. And that should be the sort of thing I could say as a purely moral statement. But on a way more selfish level, when someone says, do you want to be on my podcast? And I look at who's on the podcast, and this has happened for me a few times now, and it's all white dudes with glasses and beards, like myself. I think that's probably going to be a boring conversation, isn't it? Do I need to do the decryption thing the yellow arrow points towards? Possibly. I was getting distracted. But I think that's a good sign for the game in itself, that I'm quite happy to just piddle around doing the zap zap. Let's go for the yellow arrow. I think you get people, in terms of like that whole thing about people wanting to be instructed, you get people who are just sort of on the cusp of realizing that they need to go to a different type of content. You know, they've learnt lots from YouTube videos, and now maybe they're at a different level of learning, and they need to start learning by actually reading things or watching slightly more hardcore stuff. You know, like GDC content is on YouTube, but it's not made for YouTube. So it has poor sound quality. It is not engagement edited. There's lots of reasons why, if you're used to highly polished edited YouTube material, you might struggle with GDC videos. But I think when you're at that point where you're kind of complaining that a YouTuber is being a YouTuber and not like a game design lecturer who has, you know, prepared this very strictly edited content that doesn't have any breaks in and is just like telling you how to do stuff, then maybe you need to stop watching YouTubers for your game dev learning, and you need to be watching GDC talks if you much watch something, and like just harder stuff, and reading things, and talking to people and engaging in communities. I think one of the problems that we have with learning generally is you learn in one way for a period of your life, and then you develop a mental model where you think that that's how you learn. And then you find this quite a bit with when people go to university, where they sort of, you introduce new types of learning, like discovery-based learning, for example, is where there's a thing that people need to learn and they can't be taught it by being told, right? There are certain things that you can learn by being told and repeating them, like facts and dates and stuff. There are things that you need to learn on like a kind of more attitudinal level, and those need to be taught by creating situations for you to learn them in. And that's the sort of thing that you can't do over a video, right? You can do it to a degree. Like if you give people a thought exercise and you tell them to pause, and they have a genuine realization, but most of the time there are certain things that you cannot learn by being told them. And a good educator, particularly in adult education, will kind of create scenarios for you to learn that in. So if you've ever been in a classroom or a workshop where they didn't have a learning objective and they didn't tell you what you were learning at the start, they're probably doing some sort of discovery-based learning. And you know, that's why, for example, when I do a game jam, it has a particular restriction that is aimed at trying to get people to learn the thing that I think a lot of game developers are weak at, rather than just like, hey, make whatever you want. The theme is apples, right? That game jam exists a million times all over the world. When we set up a game jam, it has a specific learning goal, and it's all based on trying to get people to learn a particular like attitude by having certain constraints. YouTube videos are not as well set up for that kind of learning, and I think the problem is people learn how to do technology through YouTube tutorials, and then they come to something that is very different, like game design, and they expect to be taught in exactly the same way that they used to. And even if I didn't do the silly stuff like the songs and the gags and everything, I still don't think a step-by-step do this now, do this now, do this tutorial is how you learn game design. I think a lot of people that come at it more from a programming background would do incredibly well to just watch more kind of analysis videos on what makes games fun by games critics, for example. But they've kind of got this idea that, well, to learn this technical thing of programming, what I needed to do was find someone who knows how to do that and listen to them explain how it works. So that must mean that to get better at game design, what I need to do is find someone who's commercially, professionally experienced at game design and hear them talk about how it works. And if you watch the Wizard video, the stuff that a game designer can really help you with is the craft methodology stuff, like explaining how to prototype or how to run playtests. But all of the other stuff to do with understanding game mechanics or genres or players and what they get out of games, you can learn that from just a games critic that is reasonably good at explaining those things. Like if you're making horror games and you want to know how to make a really emotionally effective horror game, find someone that makes video essays about horror games. They don't need to be someone who makes horror games to be able to tell you how good horror games are made, right? And that's a kind of example of that thing where you get locked into this way of thinking that, like, well, learning for me has always looked like this, so something that doesn't look like that can't be educational. When actually, like, the thing that the new way that you need to learn how to learn is going to be of a fundamentally different shape, because the type of thing you're learning is different. And if you go from a technical thing to a more experiential kind of arts type thing, it is going to be a different type of thing you need to do in order to learn that. And once you get to the point where you're like doing something or trying to do something at a professional level, it becomes much less about being instructed in like, this is how I would do this thing, and much more about learning how to take information that's out there in the world and synthesize it into what you're trying to do. You know, so, you know, if you're making Hades, maybe it's just finding a few different video essays on similar games and seeing what people say about what makes them good or not. That will give you a lot of the information you need in order to make your game good. And it doesn't need to come from a game designer, but people just have this idea that, you know, that's how you learn things, so that everything must be learned like that. I've already got this one assaulted. I was reading the title. I've already got this one installed. This is like a third-person spaceship thingy. Okay. So in terms of the last game, before we move on, Hack Attack, I had to turn the audio down. The music is incredibly intense, that particular kind of style of music. I didn't get to the boss battle. I think it's got a really kind of good flow-inducing thing to it, that game, because I was enjoying it even when I was ignoring the yellow arrow. I would like to play that again at some point soon. I'm going to just kind of put a note towards it because I didn't get to the point where I got to a boss. Or maybe I did, but I just didn't recognize it as being a boss. Okay, so Assault Zeta. You can play with mouse or Xbox. The game feel is quite different between the two. That's interesting. Open design question. What is the value of sticking with a control scheme that is initially frustrating to players when it feels like changing that scheme takes away from the uniqueness of the game? Interesting. Okay, the game has an unconventional control scheme. Is meant to be somewhat hard to control initially, with the game's progression being the player's mastery of the controls. Okay, so this is an interesting question. I think it's a very knotty question that's tied to lots of things. So this is going to be the this is the game we're going to be looking at next. And the dev has said it has an unusual control scheme, and part of the fun is learning that. The thing that immediately jumps out to me when I look at this is because you've got this aesthetic where everything is kind of like flat interface, low poly, quite simple looking. That to me doesn't scream that this is going to be like a trollishly difficult game where the controls are going to be hard to master. So this is one of those examples of where everything in the game is connected, right? So when you ask a design question about, is it okay to do X with the controls? It's like, well, we look at the art and we say, what is that communicating about what to expect from the game? Because as soon as you see this like bright green and all of this colorful stuff, I'm not thinking super duper hardcore. So when I see all of this, I think this is like an accessible art style that is communicating that there might be something quite casual about this game. And that means that I would expect the controls to align with that. So that's my kind of first impressions when I think of that question in relation to this. So we're going to play it, and I will describe the controls because the creator has said that the controls are unconventional in some way. I'm very intrigued to find out what that means. And it could just mean bad. Let's run through the training course. I think most of the game design books are too long, to be totally honest. I'm writing one at the moment, but it is kind of peppered with case studies of well-known indie games and how they do particular things. So it's both a book about game design for indie devs and a book about indie games. Because I like to try and be the change change I want to see in the world, and one of those is I wish more people who aspired to make indie games had played more than 2 of them, or at least knew what they were. Okay, this is a quirky control scheme, but I kind of see where they're coming from. We've got like a kind of lander type thing where you've got a boost that pushes you up in the air, and you have to keep tapping it to keep at the right altitude, which is kind of fun. So we're already in the territory of like very deliberately goofy. So what I was concerned about when I initially read that message was we were going to have very normal kind of flight patterns for how the thing moves, and it would just be mapped onto the controls in a weird way. But actually we've got this kind of like, you need to consistently kind of keep yourself in the air by boosting upwards thing, which is kind of going to be fun to play around with. But I would think about whether the aesthetics fit with that at all as well. So I'm just going to... So with the mouse, we can do right click to turn the booster on, and then we tilt. So it's kind of... It feels like controlling a helicopter. It's so hard not to crash. It does, yeah, it does control like a helicopter. So I'm trying it with the mouse now. And you do have to really push off from the ground to stop yourself crashing. It's got a kind of... There's a sort of rage game quality to this where it's going to be really, really hard to master this. But I find it funny, which is a good start. I'm going to try the gamepad again now. So the gamepad, I use the right trigger to boost. I know we've had a lot of conversations today that aren't super related to the game, so those of you who have, if you've got easy to find project threads on the Discord, I'm going to go through them after the stream and just add a couple of notes of the things that stood out to me on there, because I know there's been a lot of times when I'm not talking about the game on the stream, so. Yeah, Burning Flurber said lean harder on representing the twitchiness in the art. Yeah, I think I'm going to say something similar. So, one little thing I want to say about this. It's a classic Unreal game problem. Turn those shadows off on those trees. Or do something with them. Because I see this so much. You think good 3D game art is representing the real world as much as possible. And that means the sun is over there and the trees have shadows of this length. You need to either, if you want to keep the shadows there, you need to diffuse them quite a bit, or you need to turn them off, or change the angle of the sun. Because every time I see a game made with a 3D engine with like very realistic lighting, what this does visually is those shadows are so high contrast compared to the ground that they're on that they read almost as if they're solid. To like as in terms of how the human brain interprets images. Not only that, but some of these trees are floating. But those shadows are just so dark that it makes them look like they're like a really important thing, and your brain just sort of interprets them as solid, and that gets in the way of being able to. If this was like a situation where I was trying to like fly low and fly between the trees, it would be really hard to see what I'm actually looking for as obstacles, because the shadows are just introducing loads of like noise information to my interpretation of what I need to dodge in this setting. So be very, very careful with those shadow settings. Make them way more diffuse than you think they need to be, or put the light source further above so that they're nowhere near as long. I like this basic control thing. I think you can do a lot to communicate it better, like Ferber just said in the chat. So one thing is it feels like a helicopter. So I would be looking at sci-fi helicopters as the design of the thing, because when people see that, they're going to immediately understand how to control the game. So if you make it look like an orca from Command and Conquer or something, because it is a helicopter control where your thrust both takes you upwards or in the direction that you're facing in. And if you make the vehicle look more like something people would expect to control that way, then you're going to get a better funnel of, think of like marketing funnel, people that first see the game interested in it, then people that read the page, some people lose interest, funnel gets smaller, people download the demo, funnel gets smaller, you've got your actual players now. How much does what they get in the game line up with what they expect from seeing the kind of promotional materials? It could be a flying saucer as well. Yeah, we expect a flying saucer to have that kind of tilting movement. The only reason I said helicopter is because that is how it feels to control. It feels very much like controlling a helicopter. You just want the aesthetics of this to totally line up with what the game is. Now, one thing I've noticed is that it's not so much that the mouse and the controller control differently, but for some reason the mouse seems to just accelerate way faster. So if I use the mouse and I start accelerating and tilting forwards, it's just way more sensitive than the gamepad. So you're going to need to get those kind of feeling loosely comparable, because like the speed at which the gamepad tilts back and forward is nothing like the mouse. So if you're going to give people the option, they need to be kind of the same, because people should be choosing mouse or gamepad based on what they usually play games with, rather than what feels best in this game for them, I would think. I like the core mechanic. I think if you're going to have a game that is incredibly hard to control and is blowing you up a lot, then have a think of like how you can make the world communicate that it's a bit more of a hardcore game. Make it a little bit darker. Even just making this like a bit more of a kind of desert, or looks like somewhere that might be This kind of looks like it could be Animal Crossing or something at the moment, you know. And the more you communicate that it's a little bit dark, the more people, the more likely you are for your players to be people that have come here to blow up a bunch of times. Okay, fly around the island, passing through all the columns of light. Okay, let's try and do that now. God, I love Magic Carpet. That's one of my favorite games. I didn't put it on my list. We had a 10 most influential games list the other day. Magic Carpet is one of the few games that when I was a kid, when I played it too much, I would dream in that game, and my brain would just be generating new content for that game. Most of my childhood flight dreams happened via my brain's memory of playing Magic Carpet. Okay, we're going to shoot now. Yeah, it is kind of lander controls, but we're going to start zapping stuff now. Yeah, destroy all structures. So hard to keep up in the air. I feel like exploding on a gentle landing feels a little bit harsh. I would like to just sort of like bounce back up in the air and lose some shield or something. It's quite funny that it's instant death, but I'm sort of... We've got a shield mechanic, so... Maybe it would be better to just make a slight punishment for hitting the ground. But, like, you can make it speed-based, you know? Like, if I do this, I feel like I should just... If I do this, I feel like I should just, like, lose a little bump of shield if I land like that. But then if I hurtle into the ground, blow me up. I like the way that the fire effect comes in. It feels really nasty in a funny way. Which is why I think if you try and push the creative direction in the direction of it being darkly comic, like Mars Attacks or was it Destroy All Humans was the video game equivalent, right? Because the way that the fire erupts when you laser them is very darkly comic, because there's a much more cartoony way of doing that, and there's something about that just feels really kind of grim in a funny way. So you could either go in the direction of making it really cartoony, so it's kind of even funnier that we're burning humans' houses, or just making it look a little bit kind of edgier and darker, so that it just needs to feel more deliberate, you know? That's what most creative direction is. It's just making things feel like they were deliberate choices rather than... You know, it's okay to do things like low poly because it's easier for you to do, but then you need to make it look like a creative choice that was made for the benefit of the player and their kind of emotional engagement with the game, rather than just because it was kind of easier or whatever. It's so hard. Yeah, I think you just... I think also just on difficulty kind of terms, just having more degrees of failure that aren't immediately blowing up. Because the shield at the moment only seems to interact with the combat system and not with collisions. So the shield is getting reduced by getting shot at by the military. I think I should be able to, like, fly through a bunch of trees and lose some shield and blow the trees up. And even, like, fly through a house and maybe... destroy it that way, and lose some shield, and then only... Oh, going the wrong way. But yeah, there's definitely, like, the core of something really fun here. And coming back to what we were discussing earlier about those kind of star-based scoring systems, I feel like this is the type of game where you could make quite a small set of levels for, give people like a score rating to unlock different amounts of stars, and then gradually unlock the levels. I think thinking about level design and like things like canyons and mountains and different types of geography that mean you really need to kind of play around with your height. Because at the moment, if you're playing this optimally, you're just kind of keeping just high up enough that you can zap everything and you're not too close to the ground. I think if you kind of... This should be like the idea of what an easy level is, where you can just always see everything and you're just kind of flying above it. But I think a level that has canyons and stuff would be neat. Lots of great ideas in the chat coming in on this one. This is a great project because it just immediately sparks all of these ideas. So what you should be doing really is just making a massive backlog of every idea you'd like to do with this game, and then whenever you are kind of planning what to do for it for the next stage, you set like a top line goal of like, oh, I need to make the game, you know, I need to make the game more challenging, or I need to make the feedback better on it, or I need to make the game funnier, or whatever it is. And then you go through your list of ideas from yourself and other people, and you go, okay, which of the ideas that we've had so far are going to help us achieve that goal in the next build over the next month of working on this or whatever. That's a good way to manage a project in a kind of agile way when you're making your own indie projects. Just like record every idea you have. Don't dismiss any ideas because they sound too hard or too silly or whatever. Just write them all down, and then when you come to like work on a new thing, you look back through the ideas and you're like, okay, which of these ideas add up to achieve the goal that I'm trying to do with the game? But yeah, I mean, I feel like I like the unconventional controls. I don't think they feel that unconventional. I think it's just that it feels like a helicopter. If you wanted to make the skill ceiling even higher, you could make it so that it controls slightly differently when you're firing the laser as well. That could be quite an interesting trade-off. Because these kind of skill-based games are all about sort of making the basic thing you're doing have such a specific character to it that it takes a long time for people to master it. You know, that's why you can't just like get really good at Tony Hawk and then immediately switch to Skate and be good at Skate, because the mastery of each specific game is like in how that game controls, and even if they've got like the same moves in fundamentally, it's not going to feel the same to execute with the controller. So anything you can introduce, like the ship behaving slightly differently when it's firing to when it's not firing, would be that's all good stuff to lean in on. But I would maybe think about how the art kind of communicates difficulty and stuff. And it is kind of darkly comic at the moment, and I think you can lean even further into that. And if you do that, it will help communicate that it's meant to be a hard game as well. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to exit that one now because we've basically seen the main thing. That's really neat. I think there's two ways you can take the... You definitely need to deal with the shadows problem, because it's like a visual information problem. It makes it hard to think... it makes it hard to take in what you're looking at. It's darkly comic to be blowing these up and they set on fire. And I think you could do a version of this where it's a little bit more grimdark, so it just very clearly communicates that it's going to be a hard game. Or you could go in the other direction and you could make these much more cartoony, so that it kind of really enhances the comedy aspect of what's going on. But I don't see any problems with the controls per se, because although it's a bit strange to initially learn, you're not asking the player to learn a million buttons. It's just an unusual way of maneuvering the machine and then, you know, accelerate and fire. In terms of how to structure a game like that, I would think you need levels that aren't just all fly across something and look downwards and shoot. You need stuff that has verticality in it, and and all of that. And I would test like an extreme variant of that before building much more. So you've got like a flat island as an easy level, and then you imagine like what would be a really difficult level. It's probably one where I need to like, you know, like where I need to like go up and down in mountains and valleys and stuff, and I can't always see everything from everywhere, and I need to go and find things in awkward places. I would have some more like degrees of failure where you can kind of slowly crash into things and just lose a shield and destroy the thing, because the game is quite forgiving in terms of allowing you to get shot by the military, but as soon as you just tap anything, even if you're going really slowly, you just explode, which feels very, very unforgiving. Okay, we're going to check out Resurface next. Check out Resurface. We'll try and play it in the browser. I don't think 2026 is too ambitious. I think you need to make the interface look nice. That's the sort of game you could release a small version of it with just like 4 or 5 very different levels, but then have like different star ratings for beating them with different scores, maybe things to find in the levels. Look at what games like Goat Simulator do for all of their unlocks, where it's just like loads of funny things hidden in the levels. You could do that quite well with that spaceship game. I think the other thing is, because you travel so fast, your levels might need to be much, much bigger. Because it's quite funny to be doing that little island and you zoom across things and you overshoot. But it would also be really cool to just have like a massive desert and you really have to kind of fly around and look for things. And then that could introduce the thing of just having like hidden stuff that you need to go and find. Like you could have stuff where it's like, you know, you need to... There's a bunch of badges you need to get for each level, and one of them is for blowing up all the houses, and one of them is for abducting all the cows, you know, that kind of stuff. I think I remember Brigador. That's a mech game, right? Resurface. Oh, this is the submarine game, right? I think I had a look at this yesterday when I was getting ready. Oh, that's cute. Okay, we've got some sort of upgradey tree. I'm in my little broken submarine. I've got some air. Can I collect the air? No, I was going to say, can I collect this bubble? Am I going to die already? I'm going to die already. Okay. Got some rocks. Am I going to lose my rocks because I die? Ah, no, I was close enough. Oh, this is cute. It's mini Subnautica. We need 6 stones to get better oxygen capacity. We can get a better stone yield by collecting 4 of those red stones. I'm going to call them sandstone. We can upgrade the laser. Cool. So we were talking about like upgrading away from friction earlier with the out of sight, out of mind game, throwing things in a hole. This laser is tiny. But because of what I've already seen of the game, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to upgrade that laser range quite soon. Okay, we've upgraded the laser damage. We're going to do oxygen capacity next. I feel like because this is so tightly balanced at the start, you have so little oxygen, and it's kind of forcing me to really think about the tech tree a bit more. If you compare that to the first game, the wizard game with the balls and stuff. That was just like, oh, just grab whatever. It's going to be okay because... Oh, don't... Yeah. There we go. Go back out. With the wizard game, I was just kind of just grabbing whatever from the tech tree because it didn't really feel like it was going to massively change how well I did. And I think the difference here is because I can kind of... I can lose by getting caught away from the ship. I can lose my stuff. So it means that I'm actually kind of thinking about what to save up for and how, you know, what order I want to get it in. Yep, laser range upgrade. Knew we were going to get it eventually. Are these going to be different stone, these ones with the orange in? Do I need to go down and get it? Yes. That's copper. Okay, that's like copper ore. So you still get a stone out of those. But the copper falls down and then you have to go to get it, which is a nice little kind of microcontrol thing of like, okay, the second resource actually has a different kind of pickup logic to it than the first one. So I don't just automatically get it from blowing up the block. I need to make sure it doesn't fall down and get away from me. So I quite like this upgrade speed. It feels more satisfying to me. It's only because it's weighed against this little bit of peril of I'm going to lose stuff, I'm going to get that. Ah, there we go. Okay, that increases our stone yield. That increases our swim speed. Interesting. Let's do those two. They're just universally useful. We can move the submarine. Laser range. Yeah, the bubbles confused me at first as well. They look too much like a pickup and not like a VFX. I don't really know how better to describe that. The music is lovely. I mean, the rocks are just... they're like... we've got a futuristic submarine that can just turn them into carbon, I guess. I guess the thing that makes that not feel right is that we've got like a kind of classic diver suit type suit, so we don't have the kind of Subnautica polished sci-fi Star Trek-y thing as a framing that makes that technology make sense. Can move the sub now. And then we've got cable repair allows the submarine to move to the next level. So that's like our meta level goal of like how we complete this area, I guess. Ah, okay, we're down here. Okay, so moving the sub doesn't change where the sub is in the level. We're not moving it around here, we're just going to a different level with it. Okay, that still makes sense. I would maybe talk about that differently in the upgrade tree though, because I had a moment where I thought I was going to actually get to drive the sub around, and now I feel a little bit disappointed. I thought I was going to like go to the controller, drive the sub around inside the level, and then press E, and then, you know, go back inside the sub and go up the ladder and start my little run from a different place in the underwater level. Good. Got a mega laser that I just wasted, but I'll get to use it next time. I'm just going to clear this space out so when I come back next time it's going to be easier to get in there. Really loving the art and music on this one. Oh, I don't get... Oh, that doesn't recharge between runs. Okay. The feeling of getting there just in the nick of time is pretty good. Let's upgrade our speed. Base laser damage. Lots of steps to the upgrades as well. Yeah, I feel like the speed of the upgrades in this feels quite good to me, but the initial bump might be a little bit slow for people, but I kind of like the amount of friction. Yeah, catching bubbles to do oxygen refresh would add a lot. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily need to be a skill you start off with as well. It could be like a thing you can upgrade into a little way in. Load of stuff over here. I love the way the shading is done around the exposed edge of the solid. I know it's just a simple kind of like 9-slicing tiling thing that you do in pixel art games as well, but it's just very nicely done here because it reads as being a, you know, it's being lit up by something, but it just makes a lot of visual design sense. Really lovely sound design. The little plop plop. But yeah, I agree that I think the copper blocks feel like they should be a bit more solid looking. Even just giving them an outline once they're free floating would make them feel more like objects. Because you got this weird thing where the bubbles look like pickups, but they should look like particles, and the copper looks like particles and should look like a pickup. Upgrading my yields. Have you considered increasing your yields? Yeah, it's interesting how being able to lose stuff just makes you think more about the upgrade tree. I guess it's kind of obvious, really. If you're investing a resource that's easy, you can lose, you're going to think a little bit more about it. Whereas, very easy to get very click happy if it's not balanced to have enough pushback. Which was what I experienced with the first game, which was otherwise lovely. But yeah, it just felt like it had been sped up as a demo. Speed up the cooldown of the laser blast. Excellent. I want to be able to use that more often because that's a fun toy. Here we go. It's not very good at the moment, but we'll upgrade it more. I would call the laser blast like a mega laser or something, because what the laser is already blasting when you normally use it, so I think that verb is a little bit confusing. So this is the special laser. This is like the upgraded laser that we trigger with space. That needs 33 of some resource we haven't seen before. I guess that's like titanium or something that's supposed to be. There's something over there. No, no, we're not gonna make it. Not gonna make it. I don't think you're supposed to find Atlantis. I think you're just supposed to repair your ship enough to get out of the sea, but you're so far down that you, okay. Getting into interesting kind of route carving stuff as you get further out, because you think, oh, I need to make it quicker to get over here next time, so you end up kind of tunneling and stuff. More oxygen. Just want more oxygen and more speed, which are both using stone at the moment. So I need to be still mining stone and not forgetting that stone still has a value. That's the thing I've been doing. I've been only going for the copper. Actually, the things that I really need to upgrade still use stone, so I might as well carve out a little route. And I'm thinking all of this aloud, not just to be like, hey, I'm playing a game and I'm thinking aloud, but if you're making this type of game, this is the sort of situation you want your game to generate. You know? It's these kind of realizations that someone has as they play it. Because that's the stuff people like when they play a game. It's like when they notice that they've been doing something in a suboptimal way, and then they're able to like tweak the way that they're playing the game in order to play it better. That's what you want your game to be able to produce for people. Okay, let's upgrade our stone yield so that we can get stone more quickly. And I will, rather than actually trying to dig the copper for a little while, I will just try and make sure that all of the copper is easy to get to by clearing out the stone in the way. And then I'll have lots of stone to upgrade my speed and my oxygen, and then we can concentrate on copper next. Also don't want to just like completely clear out everything, because it's going to become hard to navigate if I just don't have any sense of anything that being around me. Gravestones hold some of your resources when you pass out. That's interesting. More oxygen. We'll do the stone yield again in a minute, and then we'll do speed. So I'm not getting a kind of building tension to a monster feel, and I think it's because the pixel art is so cute and the music is also just this kind of solemn, sad thing where it feels like it's meant to be chilled out. So I'm not necessarily expecting monsters in the game. Yeah, this is hard to see. I'm agreeing with the chat that you need to just like look at the game in black and white and tweak a lot of values based on that to make things visible. Once the submarine is not surrounded by rocks, it's even harder to see as well. But I think the thing I'd really like in this is like meeting some strange undersea creatures, but there not being any kind of combat with them, you know, just like meeting some little undersea friends that are scared of you and swim away. You can kind of follow them around, but it's not a combat game and it's not a horror game. Yeah, there are little pickups for the stone. They're very hard to see. I literally only just noticed them, I thought. I think all of the pickups should just have some sort of glow shade around them or something if you're not going to put an outline on them. We'll swim faster. Make the laser better. Okay, this is great. I mean, this feels like the sort of game I could just play for 2 hours now, but I won't. But I could. Cowardly Kraken, that's a great idea. A Gruffalo situation. Yeah, I think I missed out on quite a lot of stone early in the game because I didn't see that it was a particle. One of my favorite video game tropes that there's not enough of is there's a little friend that you can't communicate with. One of my favorite games from my childhood was Another World. I think it was called Out of This World in some territories. And that had that thing. You make friends with a little alien, helps you out. Can't communicate it with him because he's an alien. Another World also has one of my favorite stories of a developer being incredibly extra. Oh, did I just buy something I couldn't afford? Eric Chahi didn't want the publishers to change the music that his friend had made for the theme. And he wrote them a fax that said keep the title screen music. And he did a fax machine attack. So what he did was he wrote a message that said keep the title screen music, and he looped it round on a piece of paper that was stuck to itself and put it through the fax machine so that the publisher would get a never-ending fax message saying keep the music over and over again. That's just so funny. I think one of the things this is showing to me is that I don't actually dislike incrementals, and I like the progression core of them. I just don't like when the progression core is used to be the only thing in the game, and that the main activity you're doing may as well just be using a fidget cube, you know? I like the fact that here I'm still having to navigate and think about, memorize where things are and learn the space and do all of the things that I might do in some sort of exploration Metroidvania type game. I like that it has all of those elements and that that's kind of feeding into the upgradey bit. It just feels like the developer's got a good sense of like all of the things you get out of a game like Subnautica, and then how to squish them down into something a little bit more cartoony and abstract and cute. It's really good. Really interested to see where this one goes. I would think, you know, before you add anything else to the game, depending on, you know, how much more you intend to do with this, just thinking about the mood and theme as being kind of paramount, because this is so kind of chilled out, and you've got this sort of slightly sad vibe of the guy being stuck at the bottom of the sea and trying to work his way back home or whatever. And I just don't think you should go down the route of like monsters on peril and stuff, because it feels sort of cozy in a slightly chilled out way. The more you collect, it kind of takes longer to transfer, and this is one of the things you can upgrade as well. So that's kind of neat. It's still going up. Speed it up. Gonna have to move on in a sec, but I'm, yeah, definitely enjoying this one. I want to come back to it. Excuse me? What was that? Where's my ship? I got a bit disoriented that time. That's the first time that I've actually kind of got disoriented from... Points towards the submarine. Oh, what perfect timing. Oxygen capacity. We need 1.6k for the next oxygen capacity thing. Okay. Increase the amounts of resources gained from all blocks. I haven't seen this other resource yet, the titanium or whatever it is. We got a lot of movement speed boost now. We're going super fast. Yeah, I really like that the game kind of encourages you to build routes. I think that's a really interesting thing in a game about digging and mining, for it to just be like it's not just about extraction, it's also about like how you create and then remember routes to move around the space to get to other things. Ah, here we go. Okay, so now we can start getting the next resource. And what I need to do is not destroy that route too much, because this is going to be how we remember how to get back to this resource for the next run. So get that for the next oxygen upgrade. What's going on up here? Is this some sort of danger zone? I feel like an experience like this is quite open in terms of like the player could go in any direction and find different things. So people are going to have quite a different onboarding experience. I think as long as you're okay with that, I think the mood of the game lends itself to that. Because yeah, you can lose a little bit of progress if you take risks, but that's the kind of thing where the player's quite in control of it, and people are going to find it less frustrating, because most of the time that makes it easier for players to take ownership of losing their stuff because they push their luck. That's what's so great about push your luck mechanics, is it when you've got any kind of push your luck type thing, it allows you to have a more difficult game because the players are sort of choosing the difficulty, and then when they fail, or maybe not the difficulty, but they're choosing the chance of their own failure, and then when they fail they kind of feel like it was their own doing rather than the game just being mean, you know? So with this kind of mechanic where it's like, oh, it's an oxygen bar, and if you go too far you're going to run out, it's like, well, yes, there is failure and losing progress, but the player will usually kind of be able to take ownership of that and go, well, yeah, I failed because of my lack of judgment rather than just because my skill is too low for this game. And judgment is a skill, but it's, you know, it's kind of, it just hits different to lose based on a judgment call and feeling like you were greedy and you tried to rush ahead too far. It feels a bit different from like just losing because the game's decided you're not skillful enough at this level. The last oxygen upgrade really felt quite substantial. I'm going to just get a load of copper here on this run, and then the next run I'm going to just try and get up to the titanium as quickly as possible and spend the entire next run just getting titanium. I probably can move the submarine, yeah, but there's quite a lot of stuff that I want to extract from this area. Some of it being the chests as well. There's going to be quite a lot of chests to find, so... Yeah, I like the idea of the bubbles being fish instead. If you wanted the fish to not feel like an interactive element that you had to like hunt or zap or anything, they could sort of swim into the same level as the player and then swim into the background and... That's oxygen ore. Special ore that gives oxygen when mined. Yeah, we can move to the next level. Okay, so I'm going to go really far out, see what's out there, and then move the submarine, and then we'll probably move on to the next game. I can't remember how many more I've got on this for today. I think it's 1 or 2. There's some slightly harder rock here now. There's a different biome. How lovely. I will destroy it with a laser. Yeah, I think all of the individual art assets in this look lovely from a thematic point of view, but I definitely agree it needs some... It needs a little bit of work in making sure things stand out. I think, like, the ore being dark in here is good because it turns it into, like, a do you notice the important thing kind of minigame. I think that's okay. But when it's actually floating around and you're collecting it, it needs to be super standout clear. You know, maybe even having a glow filter, so when there's those little particles of ore coming out and they get close to you, they sort of like look like they're lighting up just as they're hitting your character. That's nice. Let's move the submarine. We're in the abyssal zone. So it says bioluminescence. So I think we've just got one big level. Yeah, so this is the bit that I swam into before. So I could go down from here. And then I'm back where I was in the previous bit. I quite like that. I think I would be very reluctant to go to the next level if I thought I was leaving the whole map behind. So I'm glad it works that way, but I think you might need to communicate that a little bit more so people understand how that works. Because it looks like it's almost like a mini prestige mechanic where you're going to go to a completely different place and not be able to play in that area anymore. Okay, last one for today. MIRA Reactor by Zeitport. A reactor builder set in deep space. You are a reactor operator aboard deep space vessels. Each mission presents a damaged, experimental, or misconfigured reactor core and your job to stabilize it. Okay, let's see what this is. I think, Burning Flubber, I think one of the reasons for that is that it's like tidying up, isn't it? It's cleaning something. It's getting rid of stuff. I think there's a way to do that in a way that isn't eating natural resources in the game. It's just a very easy way for turning that appeal into game mechanics. Dr. Hypatia, training for your reactor license. Start. Dr. Hypatia is distracted, working on something in the corner of the workshop. She barely turns around. She gestures at a reactor core, already half built, and says something like, "It's mostly there. Press ignite. Watch what happens. Then we'll talk." This is like, is this going to be a Zachtronics game? Okay. Not sure what I learned from that, but let's see what happens next. The replicator fabricates component cards on demand. Costs hex. Everything costs hex. Okay. These things fire out white balls. Absorber plates. So I've got absorber plates, and these are gonna... Oh, okay, I think I see what this is. I put them opposite those. And what did it say that I need to press for? That, sorry, there's a tooltip button. Hold the Alt key, changes to tooltip mode. So if I press Alt, absorbs any particle on hit, generates 1 alpha energy. So these are going to shoot particles over here. This one is going to get turned into alpha energy. And the replicator draws 1 card from your deck. So can I... Oh no, that's just happening on its own. I don't put that on the grid, I guess. Okay, we've got 2 absorbers now, so I can put them there, and then if we get 1 more, it should go there. I'll put it there just so it's kind of clearer to see the range. One more absorber there, and then we're up to, like, the full efficiency of this thing. This looks like it could be a really neat basis for a puzzle. There's something quite satisfying about it. Ah, interesting. Oh no, I've put them in the wrong place. Huh. This is a neat idea. There's something cool about this. That was an annoying way to mess up though. I think I've put this in a place where it can't be hit by... Oh no, that should work. It's a very cool way of taking a very abstract puzzle and giving it a theme. Oh, you can... Oh, I didn't realize you can actively click on the replicator. Cost 1 hit. I see. Okay. Gotcha. That changes. That changes everything. Okay, we'll use them next turn. Each collision creates delta particles, and delta energy accumulates. Too much and your reactor melts down. I see. Gotcha. I don't think we can remove them once they're in, though, which is a little bit... Feels harsh when you don't understand what you're doing yet. Okay. That. This is another good example of what I was talking. I was saying that you can, you can take a particular system like the node buster progression skill tree thing and do very different things with the core mechanics and end up with something really interesting. This is the same thing. This is illustrating the same thing with deck builders, you know. People think, you know, they play Slay the Spire and they're like, okay, if I make a deck builder, it needs to be a little fight, and I need this, that, and the other. And it makes sense because you're working with all the proven parts of that game, but it doesn't really necessarily mean that you can't have a card-driven system that powers a totally different thing, like what's happening here. So we've got that resource called Hex, allows you to power the replicator, which allows you to draw more of the cards that you place around the edge. Yeah, so if anyone hasn't understood anything that's happening so far, we're shooting particles across the reactor and then catching them. But whenever there's symmetry, the particles end up crashing into each other, and then we lose them, and we also gain a negative resource. And if we gain too much of that in one cycle, I think, then the machine is broken and we have to start that level again or whatever. Flurber, what you just said, avoiding symmetry is a fun reversal of gamer instincts. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing. Don't try to work around the relays, rip them out. That's what deconstruct is for. So that allows us to get rid of stuff that we put in that we don't want anymore. What are these? Faulty relays. Okay, get rid of that. Put an absorber there. Now that and that are going to trigger at the same time, so I probably want to get rid of that. So that's going to go in there. It's hopefully not going to get hit by any of these. I'm going to put an absorber there. Because I know that because that's there, I don't want an emitter there. So I'm just going to block that. And then I'm going to also... Oh no, I don't have enough hex left. So let's ignite it and see what happens. So those two that hit were coming from there and there, which are going to always get in each other's way. So we're going to deconstruct that one as well. And put an absorber there. We're going to deconstruct that one. And that one. I'll ignite it again. We're getting delta for shooting into these and not getting rid of them. So to avoid getting any more delta from that, I would... Okay, we're gonna lose this one. This is gonna be one that we won't be able to win in the current state, I think. I thought too far ahead. Okay, we don't have anything that's gonna generate any delta now. You can bounce them back into themselves. That's cool. There's a lot of nice brain melty potential here. No, this is a negative score. This is something we don't want. This is like a danger thing. Okay, emitter there, and I don't have enough for another emitter. So the delta accumulates over the whole time in the level, but the alpha is just like how much you got in the last one, I think. I know the game has explained this, but I'm trying to... Okay. And it's recording how many cycles it takes us, so I guess there's like... This is kind of how Zachtronics games are designed as well. They have like lots of different degrees of success. Where you're sort of encouraged to just keep replaying the level over and over again and doing it more efficiently, which is why they're one of the rare puzzles that I really like, because they're not about like mastering a single solution. They're about kind of getting more efficient at a thing over time. absorber there that will shoot from there. I'll just put a bunch of absorbers down for now and then work out where they need to match up with afterwards. Quite nice to watch. I think a little bit more work on making the impacts feel positive and negative for when we're gaining alpha or delta. The delta is a bit more obvious. The alpha gain doesn't necessarily feel as immediately celebratory as it probably should. Right, we need an emitter to go into one of these. No. Don't have enough. Okay, I'll leave it for now. I think it's just because the little VFX when they hit there is like orange, which I've come to associate with the negative thing in the game now. Okay, so that goes to there. There's, I think, one of these. Is that gonna? It's quite hard to just visually guess where they line up with at first. We're supposed to collide them in some cases. Okay. I thought we were supposed to be avoiding colliding them. That's why I was building around it, like making them all miss each other. So we need to build for one more collision then, basically. So I'm getting the equivalent of mana screwed, because it's like, hey, you need to use these things before you can have another thing. I think I need to restart this level because I don't have any more emitters and I don't think I can draw anymore. I think I've broken it by misunderstanding the puzzle. Let's restart it. Okay. So we don't want these to hit these because they will generate delta energy. We do want them to hit each other. So we'll do what she says and just delete as many of these as possible at the start. I've done the wrong ones because that's the only one that won't be saved by them hitting each other. So what I should do, deconstruct that one first, because these other ones were all going to like bump into each other and just... Huh? What happened there? So I'm gonna do that again, even though I'm gonna lose because I didn't really understand what happened. So they... Oh, they turn into those little orange things. Okay, I didn't see those. They were quite faint. Okay, interesting. So we'll get rid of that, and we'll get rid of that and that. I will put an absorber there, and that will be our first turn. Okay, cool. So then we'll deconstruct that, and then I think it was there and there that they hit. It might be good if we can have like some sort of little half-life of things that hit the edge? Because I'm really finding it hard to judge the angles, and I don't think that's something that you intend to be part of the skill check of the game, of like remembering where things hit. It's hard to tell really. So if I do that now, they hit each other, they split, then they get absorbed there, and then I don't think we're taking on any new delta energy based on that. I think, yeah, it's all being absorbed. Okay, cool. So that's set us up much better. Now that means we might need to do a similar. We'll just kind of replicate the same thing. So I put an emitter there, an absorber there, and then I need to mirror the thing in the other direction. But I don't want to do it yet because if they hit each other, I don't have anything to absorb this side. So I'm just going to do that for now. And then, oh, replicator, nope. Am I going to lose if I do that? I need another absorber here. Oh, it's stable. Cool. Interesting. Let me just check. Is this the last game on the stream for today? Okay, this is the last game on the stream, so I might keep at this one for a little while. Yeah, so but you get points for the orange stuff, and it's potentially a decent amount of points, but it needs to not touch the edge without going into an absorber, otherwise it becomes the bad energy. That's kind of what's going on. So, oh, these are not facing the way they look like they're facing now. They're like, they've got angles on them. Okay, so it's going to go do. That will fire out over there. That will fire out over there. I mean, do I just ignite and see what happens first? Excuse me. Click on emitter to change the direction. Ah, cool. Okay. They're going to hit each other, and then I'm hoping that the debris, when they hit each other, goes off to where the original one was pointing. Don't know if that's what will happen, but I'll try. Yeah, cool. Okay, so these ones need tuning. They're not allowed to hit that. I think what I should do is point them both towards the middle. What does the connector do? Select, then click 2 slots to connect them. My tooltip is going off the screen. So I do not know what the connector does. Creates a field layer when activated by a slot walker. Field layer reflects one particle, sends connection signals to linked slots. I stabilized the reactor, but I don't know how I did it. Cool. Yeah, I'm not sure how much the memorizing is supposed to be part of the game. I feels a bit. So these can bounce stuff off and around. So I feel like we should be shooting directly at them in some way. But when these get shot at, they're gonna bounce stuff back. Oh no, when the slot walker goes over them, they're gonna have a shield activated. Don't know how long it lasts. So it needs to be turned on before these shoot. So these need to be further down in the sequence. That turns on. Then this turns on. And shoots over in that direction. Ugh. No. It's a little bit hard to see the range of things and all of that kind of stuff. I think might be a case of, Dev, you're a little bit too used to understanding how much things can maneuver and stuff, and none of it is kind of signaled in the game. Okay, so the walker will go past those. That will turn on the shield. This will fire over there. That will bounce off the shield. It won't get there because they're going to hit each other, so I've already messed it up. I'll run it anyway so we can see what happens, but they're going to blow up before they hit the thing. And then we need to do a wall hit and a wall bounce. I did it. I keep solving them and it doesn't feel very satisfying because I don't feel like I did it on purpose through my puzzling it out. So we could do a connector from there, and then when that's turned on, it will just do whatever else it's connected to. Yeah, this is just a little bit too brain melty for me at this stage, and I think I do like it, but I've completed a few too many challenges without really understanding how I did it, and that seems like it might be a problem. Yeah, definitely too many new pieces too quickly. I mean, that's fine for like testing them out and stuff, but I feel like this is very quickly getting me into a place where I'm trying to brute force them rather than really understand how the system works. You don't really want that. Stable that time. Yeah, I feel like it's just too easy to brute force at the moment, and I don't know how you get around that. There's something about the trial and error nature of it. I really like it. I like the puzzle and the kind of set of components that you've given people to play around with. It's really cool. I think you need to put as many helper mechanics in as possible so that people understand what they're doing. So, for example, placing the mod turrets down and not really understanding how many, you know, what their range is before I decide which thing they go on and then start clicking them. That feels bad, because if I get it slightly wrong, I need to restart the whole thing, and that's not a fun reason to restart, because it's just like the game should have given me the information before that point. So there's just lots of things like that. And I like the fact that it's kind of like you build it, you run it, you see what happened, you experiment with it. I think you need to be a little bit softer in the approach to how easy it is for players to like pull components out and move them around, because you've got the deconstructor on some levels, but it costs resources, and then other levels you don't have it at all. And that makes it harder to kind of learn how all of the parts of the game work through trial and error, because rather than making it easy to, you know, run the reactor 5 times in an attempt and kind of gradually work towards a solution, I'm putting things in the wrong place, going, oh, I don't have the deconstructor, so I can't move it, so I'll just restart the whole level, right? So I think you need a little bit, maybe more of a kind of kid gloves approach to how you self-correct during a particular play with one reactor, because as these get more complex, it just starts to feel like you put something in one place and you need to you put something in the wrong place and you need to restart the whole thing, and that doesn't feel great. And I've just had like probably about 4 different reactors that I've solved without really understanding what I did, and that means that as we progress through and it gets more complex, I don't actually have the lessons that you think I have to carry through to the next ones to solve things of increasing complexity, because I've been able to brute force them. And I didn't even try to brute force them. I was just putting things in a place, seeing what happened, and then something happened and it's like, you've completed the level. And I look at it and I'm like, I don't understand how I completed the level. Some of it could be things like the animation speeds. You know, it could be a case of you give people control over that, and as they get more comfortable with the game, they can speed it up. And at the start of the game or on a slightly harder level, you slow it all down, because some of it could be adding the tracers so that you can see what happened on the last turn. But it just, yeah, it's a little bit hard to understand how I succeeded when I succeeded. And when I'm trying to work towards a solution of my own, I would like a little bit more forgiveness in being able to like just try multiple little steps and undo them. Because you've given us a tool for undoing things, but it's costly and we don't get it on every level. What are these? Collimator corrects any particle's trajectory to target the opposite slot. Does not consume the particle. So that would be... Accelerator creates an accelerator field. Particles get 1 speed level. Particles reflect. That's cool. Yeah, I'm loving all these components and stuff that you've got. I'm like playing around with them and finding out what they all do. But the actual thought process that's going into solving the puzzles for me is just not able to function. It's too much introduced too quickly. A few helper mechanics that need to be there. Some feedback stuff's a little bit confusing. Maybe things are just a little bit too fast to be able to learn from them. I don't know. There's a lot of potentially clashing things here, I think, that just... I think having the restart take you out to the map and you need to click back in is a little bit kludgy as well. Like, I press retry, I go back to the map, I press start. I want like a quick restart on the keyboard for a game like this, I think. Accelerator there. That was kind of cool. Whatever happened there. Oh, we've got the tracers now. Okay. Nice. So that felt like I solved it because I was step by step adding stuff. But when it's a bigger ring and you put things in the wrong place and you need to move them, you can't solve it in a step by step moving forward fashion, especially if you don't give people the deconstructor on that level. Great theme as well, though. I really like the whole. I like the idea of turning particle accelerators into a puzzle game. It's cool. That was kind of nice. Let's put don't know what I'm doing at all on this one. Yeah, I think the trick with designing this one is going to just be watching as many people play it as possible, finding out what the actual vectors for the difficulty of this game are. Because they're going to be different for different people, and you need to work out how to structure the game in an order that... That was cool. You're going to need to work out how to structure the game in an order that actually represents the order of the things that people need to learn. And like someone just said a moment ago in the chat, you know, starting with those tiny little reactors where there's only like 8 slots or however many it was, makes sense, I think. This is quite overwhelming. I think one of the things that makes it overwhelming for me is the larger the wheel gets, the harder it is to really judge what things are pointing towards. And it's fine that when we've got one of these mod emitters down, we can click through the settings. But when you go to place it, you can't actually see what the targeting range is of that. And that makes it feel very unforgiving. So what I would like to see as a helper mechanic for the mod emitters, or any of these really, is when you click and you drag and you hover it over here, you can actually see the range as like a cone of effect. So the mod emitter should have lines showing you like dotted or faint lines or cycling through the directions it could be facing in. So whenever I hover this over where it could go, it shows me where the 4 or however many places it can target on the other side. Because at the moment, that's based on my like visual perception of, oh, that lines up with that or that and that. And that doesn't feel like it's the skill you're actually trying to test in this game. And it's a really big hurdle for me, like multiple levels where we've got this larger ring and we've got the mod emitters. I'm putting them down and I'm just sort of guessing what they can hit on the other side and getting it wrong like 50% of the time. So I think you need a way for every one of these, when you put it down, it should show you like whatever the player might need to know about the directionality and like coverage of that thing before you actually commit to letting go of the mouse and clicking it into that area, because that's something I'm really struggling with. And I think with these bigger rings, a lot of players will struggle with it. And it just doesn't seem like it's what you're actually trying to test with the puzzle at all. It's a great basis for something. There's loads of like style in the way that this is laid out as well already. It's there's lots of stuff here to like, but I think you're going to have to really think about the ordering of the puzzles, how quickly they ramp up in complexity, and just, you know, helper mechanics like showing what things can affect before you place them, and being able to always use deconstruct as well. There's loads of stuff here, and I think it ties into like an interesting broader question of like designing difficulty for puzzle games and part of the process being working out what people actually find difficult in the particular puzzle that you're designing, because I think that can be really difficult thing to intuit without lots of playtesting, you know. But yeah, I'm going to stop that one there because it's starting to hurt my brain. But I really like that. Thank you everyone for sending your games in. I sent a message in the Discord earlier to say. So there's a couple that were submitted. Bound Together and Fatal Exception, because you've both got deck builders. I'm going to play those at some point next week with a replay of Northander Chronicles. So I'm trying to move towards fitting patrons' games into streams with other games that have been submitted to the channel and doing it by genre. Banners, Cesareth's Banners. I'm going to do the same thing in the next week or so with some different sort of grid-based tactics games, put them together in a stream. Towers sent in Who's Afraid of You Know and said that's got a lot of kind of content warnings. So I'm going to do that on a stream on its own so people can kind of avoid those if they want to. And then everyone else who submitted a game towards the end, like I said, yeah, I will be starting to filter those into more themed streams so that we don't have this situation we started to get with the Patreon streams over the last couple of months where, you know, they've moved to having like 8 or 12 games in and we're kind of trying to fit it into 2 or 3 hours and I end up just playing every game for 10 minutes and it feels very rushed. There's no real relationship between the games. So going to start to theme the Patreon streams around specific genres or themes and to do them more frequently. So if you're in the Discord, keep an eye open for that. When I schedule your game, I will try and ping you about it. It will be easier for me if your game's title is in your server nickname or if you have a project updates what's it called, thread on there or whatever. I will try to do that whenever I can. Thank you all for sending your games over. Continue or bury the game. Chris, are you is MIRA Tracker yours? No, I think this is great. I think you should carry on working with this. I just think you need to really think about as you watch people play it, think about what they're struggling with grasping. And then it's like, okay, when you've watched a few people play this game and you have a good sense of what people don't understand, you know, what can you do to help them understand that? Some of it is going to be to do with how quickly you introduce things and how your levels are laid out. Because it's like every level is a totally new toy or concept. There's not much space for you to just like grasp a concept and then play another level where you just get to use that concept again to sort of secure it. Yeah, it just feels very, very unforgiving in terms of how quickly it introduces new things. And like I said, the kind of how large these levels are and how hard it is to visually judge things. I think the base puzzle is great. The theming's great. The graphic design for it already looks really nice. It would be a shame not to continue with it. I think you should continue with it, but there's a bunch of helper mechanics it will need to... basically, there's stuff that you understand as a developer about how this game works and how to play it that a player will never just intuitively get. And I think the angles across here is one of them. I mean, it's all the stuff I said a minute ago, but it's definitely not one that you should abandon. I think it's a good... There's some great stuff in there. I think you just need to work at making it more intuitive and presenting the game in an order that doesn't ramp up so quickly in terms of complexity. Yeah, thank you all for sending stuff in today. And I'm going to try and go through the Discord, and if you've got a thread, I will leave some notes. I know I talked over a couple of the games about different stuff that wasn't necessarily feedback on the game, so I will be looking back and doing that after this stream, and I will add the timestamps as I do that. Right, see you all soon, folks. Thanks for joining. Have a good rest of the week. I'll be back tomorrow with is it 3D parkour games tomorrow that people have sent in? Like I said, these next 3 Thursdays are the last Indies Under the Knife in that format, and then once we've worked out the new format, I will just be kind of playing people's games from the Patreon and the games that have been sent in from the general public at the same time. oh no, it's this one on tomorrow, Metroidvania-ish. So platformers that are either puzzle platformers or exploration platformers. I've lumped them together. But yeah, this deck builder day that we're doing on Monday, this is what the new indies under the knife will be like. So Fatal Exception and Bound Together are both deck builders that have come from the Patron community. Northander Chronicles is a game that was submitted by just a regular viewer, and I'll start mushing everything together like that because it just makes more sense and is going to be easier to organize. And then you get your games played, patrons get their games played alongside similar games in similar genres rather than it being a really big grab bag like today, which is kind of fun and interesting in its own right, but it means that we don't have things to kind of compare and contrast. And I like to put games together that are either in the same genre or cover the same theme in some way, because it gives us kind of talking points throughout the stream to kind of compare the games. And I think that's usually more helpful. So, yeah. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you all soon.